Chapter 238. Sullen's body was already tall, and with Hathaway's support, the attacks launched by the surrounding purple tulips didn't pose too much of a threat to the two. Sulen brandished his sword and kept cutting off the branches and leaves of the purple tulips. After being attacked, the attacks of the purple tulips weakened a lot. Hathaway took out a small pouch and grabbed some powder from it. She chanted some incantation and scattered the powder. The purple tulips that were still attacking the two suddenly slowed down. After a while, the attacks completely disappeared. The surrounding purple tulips were like drunkards, swaying and not moving. What is this? Sullen's eyes lit up. This is hypnotic powder. Alright, let's leave quickly. Plants have a high resistance to hypnosis. They will wake up soon, Hathaway urged. Sulen nodded, then pulled Hathaway and quickly walked towards the depths of the sea of flowers. Along the way, Hathaway kept sprinkling hypnotic powder on the surrounding purple tulips. Soon, the two passed through the sea of flowers. Behind the sea of flowers were some buildings that had been severely weathered. These buildings should have been heavily damaged. There were still some traces left on the ruins. Sulen found some wrinkles on the wall nearby. Sulen went over to take a look, but there was nothing special. It should be just an ordinary spatial wrinkle. After arriving here, the two didn't rush forward. Instead, they first searched the ruins. They didn't know if it was because the destruction was too thorough, but there was nothing valuable here. After finding nothing, the two began to enter the depths of the ruins. After arriving here, Sulen clearly felt that the space here was a bit strange. There was a strange membrane separating them from the outside world. After entering the secret realm, there were a lot more buildings inside, and many of them were relatively well preserved. Be careful. Although it seems that no one has been here for a long time, some runic magic circles are still operating normally. Don't touch their defense mechanism, Hathaway said after observing for a while. Sulen nodded gently, then asked, Hathaway, can you tell what period this secret realm is from? Looking at the style of these buildings, some of them seem to be from the later period of the Arcane Kingdom. However, the secret realms of the later period of the Arcane Kingdom are generally based on half-bit walls or artificial bit walls. Secret realms like this that fold space directly are rarely used. The difficulty of building a secret realm that uses this kind of space-folding technology is much lower, and the value inside will be much lower, so you have to be mentally prepared. But it's not without benefits. If the level of the ruins is low, the level of danger inside will naturally be low. Even if we find those secret realms made by semi-planes or even planes, we can only look at them. Secret realms of that level are very dangerous. Hathaway, do you know how to use the space-folding technology? How about we also build a secret realm in North Town? Sulen looked at the secret realm in front of him and said. The technology of creating a secret realm has been lost. Maybe some large wizard schools still have it. Our school doesn't have the information about the construction of a secret realm. Moreover, it costs an astronomical amount of money and resources to build a secret realm. Hathaway shook her head and said. Then see if you can try to control this secret realm. This secret realm doesn't look small, and the degree of damage isn't too high. It would be better if it can be repaired. I'll try. Hathaway looked at the secret realm. She was also very interested in it. Sulen looked around, then walked to a relatively intact building not far away. The materials used in these buildings looked very ordinary, but after so many years, they were still not completely damaged. It was obvious that the hardening spell had been cast on them. Sulen gently pushed the door open. A huge cloud of dust flew into the air. He quickly took a step back and summoned a wind elemental to sweep the dust away. The house was empty. Aside from a pile of decaying furniture, there was nothing else. There were no monsters or corpses inside, either. Just as Sulen was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly seemed to have discovered something. He went directly to one of the walls, reached out, and gently knocked on it a few times. A hollow sound came from the wall. There's something in there. Sulen's eyes lit up. He immediately picked up the long sword and stabbed it into the wall. Then with a gentle stroke, the wall was pried open. There was a hole in the wall, and there was a small locked box in it. Sulen picked up the box and looked at it. He then signaled Hathaway to step back while he took out a wire to pry open the lock. Sulen had done this kind of job many times before. After all, he often went over walls to pry open locks. He talked about life with the noble ladies and young ladies and imparted his knowledge to them. His lock-picking skills had long been practiced to first class. Some of the old thieves were not as good as him. Not only was he good at picking locks, but he was also very good at picking the heart locks of the noble ladies and young ladies. He used to be the guardian knight of several young ladies. "It's locked. Let me open it," Sulen said confidently. "Gotcha. Gotcha." After a while, Sulen fiddled with the wire back and forth in the lock cylinder, but the lock could not be opened. Sulen felt a thin layer of sweat on his head. What's going on? Are the locks of the Arcane Empire so powerful? Gotcha. There was a soft sound. The lock on the box had been broken by Sulen. It turned out that this kind of thing had been stored for thousands of years, and the internal structure had long rusted away. Sulen inadvertently used too much force and broke the lock directly. After opening the box, Sulen did not open it immediately. This kind of box was generally set with a magic trap. Once it was opened, it would suddenly spray out effects such as strong acid, crossbow arrows, lightning, poisonous smoke, and so on. This kind of trap was impossible to guard against, so it was not wrong to be cautious. He put the box on the ground and carefully opened it. Sulen's body tensed up, and he was ready to dodge at any time without triggering any mechanism. Just as Sulen was about to relax, a flash of light came, followed by an acid arrow that was not as thick as a finger. Sulen's body flashed and he easily dodged it. The acid arrow flew less than 20 centimeters and fell to the ground weakly. A normal acid arrow was more than 10 times stronger than this one, and it could fly very far. However, considering that this trap had been there for so long, it could still be activated. This in itself showed that the person who set the trap was very skilled. After dodging the acid arrow, Sulen picked up the box. There was not much in the box, only a few colorful gems. There was a ruby and a sapphire that were the size of a pigeon's egg and of good quality. There was also a crystal bottle beside it, but the liquid in the bottle had long dried up, leaving only some brown powder at the bottom. "Here you go." Sulen handed the ruby and sapphire to Hathaway. Hathaway reached out and took the gems. Her beautiful big eyes were smiling like crescent moons. She took out a handkerchief and wiped the gems clean, then put them away with a smile. Sure enough, women were like dragons, unable to resist the temptation of these shiny gems. With the first building's facade already having such a harvest, the two's interest in treasure hunting was even higher. Following that, the dozen or so buildings that were still intact were all swept clean. Even the walls and floors were searched, but their harvest was not much. They only found a well-preserved magic scroll in one of the rooms. There were 5 hexagram symbols on the left side of this magic scroll, indicating that this magic scroll recorded a level 5 spell. A level 5 spell was still very valuable. If bought from a wizard, it would cost about 300 to 500 kinnar. He handed the magic scroll to Hathaway. Hathaway opened the scroll and looked at it, but after a few glances, Hathaway frowned. There were many runes on this level 5 spell that she had never seen before, and the runes on it were even more complicated than a level 6 spell. Although she did not recognize this magic scroll, it did not mean that she could not learn it. As long as she learned these new runes and released them, she would be able to master this spell. The only problem was that it would be more difficult to learn. After harvesting 2 gems and a level 5 spell scroll, Sulen and Selena left the ruins of the building and continued to go deeper into the secret realm. Soon, the two arrived near a farmland. At this time, the farmland had long been deserted, and only some plants grew sporadically in some places. After getting closer, Hathaway's eyes lit up. She immediately recognized that these were all magical plants. However, there was a layer of runic circle outside the farmland. Seeing this situation, Su-Len and Hathaway directly used brute force to break it. Fortunately, the runic circle had not been maintained for a long time, and its power had dropped to the extreme. Hathaway hit it with a fireball, and the runic circle kept flickering. After a few consecutive fireballs, finally, with a soft sound, the runic circle flickered a few times and dimmed completely. Without the runic circle, Su-Len and Selena entered the farmland. This farmland should have been used to grow all kinds of magical plants. Later, maybe because of war or other reasons, all the magical plants here were harvested. Those magical plants that were still growing now should be the seeds that accidentally fell during the harvest. These seeds later took root and grew in the farmland. The farmland in front of them covered a vast area of hundreds of acres. Some magical plants grew sporadically in it. Su-Len and Hathaway did not continue to explore the ruins and left to harvest these magical plants. Although there were not many of these magical plants, their quality was very high. They had been growing for at least a few hundred years. Many of them were even almost extinct now. Chapter 239. Around these farms, Su-Len also found some broken crystal pillars with many runes engraved on them. After careful identification, Hathaway found that the runes engraved on them were used for scouting, monitoring, and changing the surrounding environment. In the era of the Arcane Empire, the Arcanists could use spells to monitor the growth of the magic plants at all times, and change the surrounding growth environment according to the needs of the magic plants. Su-Len even suspected that this work didn't need anyone to intervene. Under these crystal pillars, Su-Len also found energy channels used to transmit magical energy. However, many of the channels were broken, and the energy inside was almost dry. Intruders detected. Intruders detected. Counterattack triggered. Eliminate the intruders. Body recharging. Insufficient energy. Activating reserve energy. Activating reserve energy. Activating counterattack. Mission instruction: eliminate the intruders. The cold mechanical voice suddenly sounded. A ray of light swept across a well-preserved crystal pillar next to them, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. In the distance, a faint red light lit up in the gray fog, and some tall black shadows walked out of the fog. It was a few tall fully constructed puppets. These fully constructed puppets were different from the ones that were popular among the wizards. They were painted in black and had a metallic luster, giving them a heavy feeling. Steel golems? Seeing the fully constructed puppets in front of him, Su-Len recognized them at a glance. The leading steel golem gave Su-Len a feeling that it was very similar to the original version of Iron Man's armor in his previous life. One or two of the steel golems were damaged, which should be the traces of a battle. Target found. Attack. After finding Su-Len and Hathaway, the leading steel golem instantly aimed its arm at the two of them. Then, its palms separated, and a black hole appeared in front of them. A burst of energy instantly burst out. Sullen's expression changed. Without thinking, he pulled Hathaway aside and dodged. Boom! Boom! A few consecutive energy blasts hit the place where the two of them were standing just now. A 4 or 5 meter deep crater was blasted out of the ground, and a mushroom cloud rose in the explosion. F***CK. So powerful. Su-Len sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw the craters on the ground. Then, global warming. Every single one of these magic golems was more powerful than a great fireball, and if they fired continuously, they would be able to bombard the ground. This kind of magic golems could easily wipe out an entire army. Lightning spear. A spear made entirely of lightning appeared in Sullen's hand. In the next second, the lightning spear streaked across the sky and instantly hit the steel golem at the front. The powerful lightning energy melted the steel golem's chest into molten iron, and a large amount of lightning energy instantly burst out. The entire steel golem was covered in lightning. The steel golem's red eyes flickered back and forth a few times before slowly extinguishing. The steel golem that weighed several tons crashed to the ground. The other steel golems turned their arms and fired their energy cannons at the two of them. High-risk target detected. Prioritize high-risk target. The remaining steel golems all aimed at Su Len and fired energy cannons one after another. Seeing this situation, Hathaway's hands flickered and released spells one after another. Slow. Energy shield. Haste. Chain of fireballs. A flash of light enveloped the steel golems, and the already somewhat slow steel golems became even slower. A translucent energy shield rose from Sullen's body, and his already fast speed increased again. 5 fireballs appeared next to Hathaway. In the next second, these fireballs drew an arc and hit 3 steel golems. The flash of light dissipated, and to the two of them's surprise, the golems were actually unharmed, only a little damaged on the surface of their steel. What a high magic defense. Su Len slid, his figure flashed, and went around the golem from the side. Then, he took a big stride forward and slashed at the golem's leg joint with the sharp sword in his hand. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The steel golem's body shook slightly, and a deep sword mark appeared on its leg joint. Sullen's feet moved quickly, and he dodged the steel golem's sweep. In the next second, his body had already turned to the other side. At the same time, the sharp sword in his hand didn't stop at all, and he kept slashing at the steel golem's leg. Sparks flew, and soon, the steel golem's leg joint became scarred. Crack! With a soft sound, the already scarred joint could no longer withstand the attack and suddenly broke. The steel golem that had lost a leg could no longer maintain its balance, and its heavy body fell to the ground with a bang. Freezing beam. 3 Hathaway took advantage of the moment when Su Len was fighting with the golem and quickly summoned 3 icy blue rays. The blue rays instantly hit the 3 steel golems, and the steel golems, which had already been slowed down by the slow spell, became even slower. Su Len didn't let go of the opportunity. With a sweep of the sword in his hand, he cut off the leg joints of the 3 steel golems. After losing the ability to move, these steel golems all became targets. Soon, Su Len easily cut off their energy centers. After losing the energy centers, the red eyes of the steel golems flickered a few times and slowly extinguished. Su Len breathed a long sigh of relief and threw away the long sword in his hand that had turned into a sawtooth. Damn, these golems are really hard. Next time, I must change to a better weapon. Without a suitable weapon, this thing is like dismantling a mech with bare hands. Hathaway, can you make these golems? My current alchemy level is not enough, and these steel golems from the Arcane Empire are more difficult to make than the ones that are circulating now. I need to take them back and disassemble them. Hathaway shook her head with a wry smile. The craftsmanship of these golems was much more powerful than the steel golems in her school. Su Len got up and came near these steel golems. Then, he found the best preserved and lightest damaged steel golems and put them away with the storage parachute. As for the other golems, they could only be left here now. Although Sullen's storage space was large, it was very difficult to fit one in. The steel golems in front of him were basically identical in appearance. They were not the products of handmade workshops at all. Su Len suspected that these steel golems were like the products of an assembly line. The challenge rating of these steel golems was about level 13. Su Len could solve them so easily. Part of the reason was his own strength. The other part was that these golems lacked energy. Otherwise, these golems would have been attacking with energy balls. That kind of intensive energy cannon storm, even Su Len would have to temporarily avoid the spearhead. The two of them simply packed up their spoils of war and continued to walk deeper into the secret territory. After passing through the farmland, they soon saw a lake. The lake water was clear, but it was dead silent inside. After being sealed for such a long time, the ecology of the lake water had long been destroyed. After searching here for a while, Su Len only found a few lotus seeds in the soil. The lotus seeds were well preserved and should be able to germinate. Hathaway was going to go back and try to plant them. Bypassing the lake, a large number of buildings appeared in front of them. However, these buildings were seriously damaged. There were broken walls everywhere. Many of the buildings were directly erased, leaving only some large pits on the ground. Sulen picked up a piece of gravel and examined it. The gravel on the ground was all made of obsidian. The obsidian that was blessed with hard transformation was destroyed to this extent. It could be imagined how fierce the battle that took place here was. Although most of the buildings in the ruins were seriously damaged, the castle in the middle was still mostly preserved. After a simple search outside for a while, the two entered the castle. The castle was a mess. Several steel golems were scattered on the ground. These steel golems were seriously damaged. Many of them were rusted. Obviously, they had been scrapped. In addition to the steel golems, there was a large number of skeletons. However, after a long time, except for a few skeletons, most of the skeletons had become broken. In addition to human skeletons, there were many obviously thicker orc skeletons. There were also some skeletons that should be giants. Seeing the skeletons everywhere, Sulen could imagine how fierce the battle had been here. Bypassing these skeletons, Sulen walked into the castle. There were skeletons everywhere along the way. Sulen followed these skeletons. Sulen soon found the control center of this secret realm. In a well-preserved room in this castle, Sulen saw a place that looked like a control room. 6 thick metal pillars were engraved with a large number of runic magic circles. Next to this runic magic circle was a huge crystal curtain wall. However, this crystal curtain wall was now cracked into a spider web. Around this room, the battle was also the most intense. A large number of weapons were discarded on the ground. Sulen picked up a curved sword. The enchantment on the curved sword had lost its effect after thousands of years. Even the material had become rusty. Weapons of this level had lost their repair value. In the end, they could only be reforged. Most of the weapons here were in this state. Only a few high-level enchanted weapons still had some enchantment effect. However, if they wanted to continue using them, they had to find an alchemist master to repair them. Kacha! A noise came from the room, and an undead aura appeared. Skeletons swayed as they stood up. Sulen glanced at them, but didn't pay them any attention. In this secret land that had been closed for thousands of years, and with so many people dead and injured, it was normal for some undead to be born. However, because of the environment, it was very difficult to produce high-level undead. Some low-level ghosts and skeletons were easily dealt with. Chapter 240. Soon, Sulen and Hathaway had searched through the place. In the end, they found 6 enchanted weapons and 3 pieces of magical jewelry that could still be repaired. One of them was a ring, a bracelet, and a necklace. There was not a single space bag. After thousands of years, the enchantments on the space bags would lose their effectiveness. If they were lucky, the items inside would fall out. If they were unlucky, they would be destroyed when the space collapsed. The 3 pieces of magical jewelry were made of good materials. If not, the magical light on them would have dissipated long ago. However, the fact that they could be preserved for so long meant that they were of good quality. Sulen, look what I found. Hathaway shouted in surprise at this moment. Sulen quickly put away the items and looked over. He saw Hathaway waving at Sulen excitedly with a crystal ball in her hand. What is this? Sulen looked at Hathaway strangely. The control center of the arcane realm. This is the control center of this arcane realm, Hathaway said loudly. Sulen was overjoyed. He didn't bother to pick up the scraps anymore and ran over quickly. This is the control center of the arcane realm? Sulen asked as he took the crystal ball from Hathaway. This crystal ball was not much different from an ordinary crystal ball. However, there was some strange energy in it. This is the control center made by the arcanists. After it is activated, it can control the entire arcane realm. However, the energy here has been cut off for a long time. If we want to activate it, we need to reconnect the energy, Hathaway explained. Where is the energy source of the arcane realm? The energy source of this arcane realm should be the elemental pool. Such an important facility should be placed in the safest place. If I'm not mistaken, it should be in this castle. We've already searched the upper floors and did not find the elemental pool. Then it must be in the basement. The two did not waste any more time and immediately started looking for the passage to the basement. After some effort, the two of them finally found a room that led to the basement in an inconspicuous room. Through a long passage, the two of them arrived at the basement of the castle. The basement didn't suffer too much damage, and the crystal magic lamp on the wall was still emitting a faint light. Some damaged golems were lying on the ground. In the middle of the basement, a pool with a diameter of 10 meters appeared in front of the two. The pool was built with marble, and many complex runic circles were engraved on the marble. The pool was surrounded by energy channels made of magic crystals. These energy channels transmitted the energy in the pool to various parts of the secret realm. However, the energy in this elemental pool was close to drying up. The original marble wall was full of cracks, and several runes were damaged. Overall, this elemental pool was still 70% complete. Some elemental energy also leaked out from the energy pool. Although it was damaged, the elemental pool was still partially functional. It could draw energy from the 4 elemental planes, but the efficiency was very low. This was also why this secret realm could last for thousands of years. Now that the elemental pool's energy was about to run out, Sulen had to repair this elemental pool if he wanted to regain control of this arcane realm. Hathaway, can this elemental pool be repaired? Sulen frowned and asked. I need to check it, Hathaway said with a serious expression. A complete elemental pool required at least a rank 4 wizard to build. Hathaway was only one step away from that. However, the elemental pool in front of them was still 70% complete, so it shouldn't be too difficult to repair it. The elemental pool was also the energy source of a wizard tower. Only a wizard tower with an elemental pool could be considered a true wizard tower. It used the connection between the 4 elemental planes, then drew elemental energy from the 4 elemental planes and gathered it into elemental water. Elemental water was the most peaceful state of elemental energy. It was also used in many alchemy experiments. Building a complete elemental pool required about 500,000 to 1 million kinnar. In addition to the basic marble, it also required 4 high-quality magic gems. 1 ruby, 1 sapphire, 1 emerald, and 1 topaz. These gems were used to connect the 4 elemental planes. If the quality of the gems wasn't high enough, they would explode when they passed through elemental energy. In addition to these, the elemental pool required a large amount of silver and gold, a small amount of mithril, and large high-quality magic crystals. Large pieces of high-quality magic crystals had very good magic conductivity, so there was very little loss in the process of conducting magic energy. At the same time, magic crystals were very abundant in the material world. Wizards had even grasped the technology to make artificial magic crystals. Because magic crystals had the highest cost-performance ratio, they were used in large amounts. The surface of the elemental pool required a large amount of silver coating. Silver, gold, arcane dust, arcane steel, and star iron were used to carve the rune circle. The rune circle in the elemental pool was a large-scale energy-gathering circle. In addition, there were 4 rune circles used to connect the 4 elemental planes. Hathaway didn't have that many materials in her hands. Fortunately, Sulen had a lot in his storage space. Some of the materials she didn't have had to be taken down from the scrapped steel puppets. Then she smelted them on the spot. Hathaway was very familiar with refining and fusing materials. She summoned a ball of spirit fire, then controlled the wizard's hand to melt all the metals. Finally, she smelted them together and obtained a ball of silver liquid with golden threads. Sulen repaired the damaged marble while Hesse didn't smelt the materials. Then Hathaway began to control the wizard's hand and used a carving knife to repair the damaged runes on the elemental pool. Strands of silver wire were extracted from the molten metal and then carefully engraved on the marble wall. The runic array of the elemental pool required a very high degree of precision. According to the saying in his previous life, it was accurate to the micrometer. This level of intelligence relied on mental strength to carry out the operation. Hathaway's movements were very slow. She didn't dare to be careless. Su Len had been holding his breath for a long time. There were more than 300 runes on the elemental pool. There were more than 90 runes that needed to be repaired. All the runes needed to be engraved to the micrometer. Hathaway repaired the runes one by one, and the molten metal continued to fill them up. After a few hours, the sky was already dark, and Hathaway finally repaired the last rune. As the runic circle was repaired, a light flashed, and the elemental pool that was still leaking no longer leaked out. In addition to these, the original 4 magic gems used to connect the 4 elemental planes also needed to be replaced. After thousands of years of operation, these gems had not been maintained. The connecting channel had become very unstable. There was a possibility that it could be interrupted at any time. Hathaway took out 4 red, yellow, blue, and green gems of the same size and quality from her storage bag. She began to carve them with a carving knife. These gems needed to be engraved with symbols that represented the 4 elements. Compared to the elemental pool, the carving of these gems was much simpler. Soon, the 4 magic gems were carved into the shape of a rhombus. Each of the gems was engraved with a rune. Hathaway carefully replaced the original 4 magic gems in the elemental pool. The 4 new magic gems were successfully integrated into the 4 directions of the elemental pool. Buzz! There was a soft sound, and the whole space seemed to vibrate slightly. Then, 4 large amounts of energy appeared in the basement. Traces of strange energy flowed into the elemental pool. The elemental energy gathered in the elemental pool and formed a light blue elemental water. Soon, a thin layer of spring water appeared in the elemental pool that had almost reached the bottom. With the appearance of the elemental water, the concentration of elemental energy in the basement became very high. The establishment of an elemental pool was not only an important source of energy for the secret plane or the wizard tower, but also a great change to the surrounding environment. The most obvious change was the increase in concentration of elemental energy. The elemental pool could transform the area into an area where elemental energy was active. In this area, the casting speed and mana recovery speed of wizards would be increased. At the same time, the effect of meditation would also be increased. This was very important for wizards. At the same time, a rich elemental energy could also be used to grow all kinds of magical plants. The rich elemental energy here was more suitable for their growth. According to the classification of wizards, the concentration of elemental energy was divided into several levels. The place with the highest concentration of elemental energy was called the elemental land. In this place, the elemental energy was close to liquefaction. Living in this place for a long time would slowly change the body of the person who lived in this place. In the end, it would even evolve some spell-like abilities. The second level was the elemental land. Most of these places were modified by wizards. Basically, an elemental pool could be modified into a whole area. After that, the third level was the elemental land. Most of these places were naturally formed and rich in elemental energy. Usually, many magical plants and magical beasts would grow in these places. The fourth level was the normal concentration of elemental energy. Most material planes were in this state. The fifth level was the elemental land. This kind of environment was not very common in the main material plane. The recovery speed of wizards would be reduced if they meditated here. The seventh level was called the dead magic land. In this kind of area, elemental energy was extremely scarce. It would be very difficult for wizards to cast spells. The difficulty of casting spells would directly increase by 1 circle, and the recovery speed would also be very slow. Most of these areas were caused by serious damage to the material plane or serious experimental accidents. The most famous place was the Desert of Despair. There were also some areas called the Forbidden Magic Land. These places were almost completely devoid of elemental energy. The difficulty of casting spells would be increased by at least 2 circles. Generally, when low-level wizards came here, they would directly lose their ability to cast spells. Chapter 241. The elemental pool has been successfully repaired. Your hero Hathaway has gained 42,000 experience points. Hathaway has leveled up. I found the opportunity to break through, Hathaway said in surprise. Su-Len looked around and said, you can break through here. The elemental pool is full of elemental energy. I'll guard outside for you. Don't worry about your safety. Hathaway hesitated for a moment and nodded. She would not let go of the opportunity to break through. Okay. Since she had decided to break through here, Hathaway did not hesitate and directly entered the elemental pool. Under normal circumstances, wizards would choose to break through in an area full of elemental energy. This kind of environment was very beneficial for them, especially for high-grade wizards. They would absorb a large amount of elemental energy when they were breaking through. If there was a lack of elemental energy, it would affect the wizard's ability. To put it bluntly, it was the increase of the power of the will and mana. Some powerful high-grade wizards would even trigger an energy vortex when they were breaking through. Therefore, wizards who had the right conditions would usually choose to break through in an area full of elemental energy. Some pragmatic organizations would even use the energy of the elemental pool. However, compared to Hathaway's current conditions, these were nothing. Although the elemental pool was not full yet, it was enough for Hathaway to break through. After the elemental pool was repaired, the elemental energy began to slowly gather. According to the energy levels set by wizards, the elemental pool in front of them was a medium-sized one. It could store up to 200,000 to 300,000 points of energy. It could transform the entire secret plane into a place full of elemental energy. It could support the normal operation of the secret plane. At the same time, it could also support the daily training of 50 wizards, 50 steel golems, and 120 stone golems. Hathaway began to meditate in the elemental pool. Soon, the surrounding elemental energy began to gather around her and formed an elemental vortex. A large amount of elemental energy entered Hathaway's body. Hathaway's breakthrough did not have any setbacks. She had already accumulated a lot of elemental energy, and with the abundant elemental energy provided by the elemental pool, everything went smoothly. When the elemental vortex disappeared, Hathaway's breakthrough also ended. Soon, Hathaway walked out of the elemental pool in high spirits. After completing the advancement, North Garrison City now had 3 4th-level spellcasters. In terms of high-level spellcasters, even Cult City had more than North Garrison City. Although he was happy that Hathaway had successfully advanced, he still had more important things to do. Su-Len had to reactivate the control center of the sorcerer's secret plane and take control of it. This was the only way to control the sorcerer's secret plane. At the same time, he had to repair the secret plane as soon as possible. After becoming a grand wizard, Hathaway's power had greatly increased. Moreover, because she had repaired the elemental pool before, she had a deeper understanding of this place. There were several energy channels outside the elemental pool, and these energy channels were made of pure natural magic crystals. After checking for a while, Hathaway found the energy channel leading to the main control room. However, the energy channel connecting to the main control room had been destroyed. If she wanted to use it, she needed to repair it first. Su-Len didn't have any magic crystals with him at the moment. Fortunately, there were many of them in this secret plane. Su-Len and Hathaway directly removed a section of the damaged energy channel. Then, they used soul fire to melt and mold the channel. Finally, they engraved runes on it, and a section of the energy channel was completed. After replacing the newly created energy channel and checking that there were no problems, Hathaway opened the energy channel to the elemental pool. Light blue elemental energy directly entered the energy channel. The originally dim energy channel quickly emitted a faint blue light. The energy channel connecting to the main control room quickly lit up. Soon, the entire channel was filled with elemental energy. Su-Len and Hathaway confirmed that the energy channel was not leaking and that it was working well. Only then did they return to the main control room. At this time, the energy channel connecting to the central console and the main control room also lit up. The console surrounded by 6 metal pillars also entered a state of activation. However, it couldn't be activated because it didn't have a control center. Su-Len and Hathaway looked at each other. Then, Hathaway picked up the control center in the shape of a crystal ball and came to the console. She gently snapped her fingers and a light flashed. The originally complete console was instantly divided into several pieces. After a dazzling combination, a silver-white circular metal platform slowly rose up. Hathaway gently placed the crystal ball on the metal platform. Hum. With a soft sound, the entire console instantly emitted a faint blue light. The light lasted for about a few seconds and quickly disappeared. Then, the crystal ball on the console began to slowly light up. Control center beginning to charge. Current progress, 20%, 30%, 80%, 90%, 100% charging complete. Beginning system self-check. System self-check complete. Control center beginning to activate. Activating. Please wait. Hum hum hum. With a low buzzing sound, the control center began to activate. The original crystal ball emitted a dazzling light. The entire control room was shrouded in a blue light. Activation successful. Control center detected damaged. System repair is in progress. Beep beep beep. The damage is too great. Repair failed. Starting backup program. System resetting. Please wait. System resetting successful. Honorable Arcanist, Northern Dawn Outpost Secret Realm, Tower Spirit number 1 at your service. Please set the level of authority. Hathaway sets Sulan and her to the highest level of authority. Tower Spirit number 1, check the environment of the Secret Realm and display the current state of the Secret Realm. After setting the level of authority, Sulan directly ordered. Mission accepted. Executing. Please wait. As the mission proceeded, a wave of energy spread from the console and quickly spread throughout the entire Secret Realm. Sulan looked at the Tower Spirit with some surprise. The appearance of this thing almost destroyed Sullen's worldview. In Sullen's view, this Tower Spirit was completely a high-end artificial intelligence. It was much more powerful than the artificial intelligence in his previous life. After asking Hathaway, Sulan finally had a preliminary understanding of the high-level construct life Tower Spirits. Tower Spirits were artificial life created by Arcanists to help them control wizard towers and floating cities. Yes, life. There were many types of Tower Spirits. The most common type was the support type. Although they were at the legendary level, they basically had no combat ability. They had a huge amount of computing power and could perform all kinds of data analysis. They were not only used to manage wizard towers, assist in experiments, collect data for analysis, optimize and improve templates, and support in combat. Battle Tower Spirits focused on combat. They may have their own exclusive golems or could control a large number of weapons to fight. However, this did not mean that the Battle Tower Spirit was the highest level. On the contrary, the support type was the highest level. A Tower Spirit that could control a floating city was at least at the advanced legendary level. It could even be at the demigod level. Managing a large city, especially a floating city, was difficult. The computing power required was definitely at the astronomical level. Ordinary Tower Spirits would not be able to support it. The Tower Spirit in this secret realm was a support-type Tower Spirit. Its level was also at the legendary level. In other words, to make a legendary Tower Spirit like this, at least a legendary Soul Shard and then a Grandmaster Alchemist would be required to make it successfully. Most of the Tower Spirits in the Wizard Tower were auxiliary Tower Spirits. They could replace the wizard to control the Wizard Tower when the Wizard Tower was out. They could also distinguish between friend and foe, and when the enemy attacked, they would directly activate the battle mode. If a Wizard Tower without a Tower Spirit had a challenge level of 13 to 15, then a Wizard Tower with a Tower Spirit would have a challenge level of 21 legendary. After giving out the mission, Tower Spirit number 1 began to perform a large number of calculations. A large number of data flashed on the crystal display beside it, but the display was full of cracks and could not be seen at all. Beep. Scan complete. The current level of completeness of the secret realm is 76%. The area is 10 square kilometers. Number of puppet golems, 0. Storage of supplies, 0. the level of completeness of the energy channel is 48%. The level of completeness of the space folding formation is 16%. The level of completeness of various facilities is 36%. At the same time, a three-dimensional model of the secret realm they were in appeared in front of them. Su-Len pointed with his finger and the model was enlarged instantly. Soon, Su-Len found the area they had entered before. The three-dimensional model had all the areas in the secret realm marked. Tower Spirit Number 1, create a repair plan. Creating a repair plan. A series of data was announced by Tower Spirit Number 1. If the secret realm ruins in front of them were to be used again, they would have to undergo a large-scale repair. Looking at the receipt given by the Tower Spirit, Su-Len felt his blood pressure rise. According to the materials on the receipt, it would take at least millions of kinnar to repair this secret realm. Suggest repairing the space folding circle first. After the repair is done, the secret realm will be hidden again. Organize the materials and plan needed to repair the space rune circle. Then, the three-dimensional model in the secret realm was divided into dozens of small areas. At the same time, the energy nodes of the ley lines in the secret realm were marked one by one. A rune circle appeared in front of them. There were still many incomplete parts on this rune circle. The green parts on the rune circle were normal, the red parts were damaged and needed to be rebuilt, and the yellow parts were damaged and needed to be repaired. Everything was displayed in an orderly manner. P.S. There are 2 more updates. They may be late. Chapter 242. After checking the area that needed to be repaired, it was the area where Su-Len and Kate came in. Su-Len then checked the map of the entire mysterious realm. Su-Len could clearly see all the areas in the mysterious realm through the 3D map. Other than the plantation area, there were also the living area, the warehouse area, the production area, the entertainment area, and the central area. The central area was where Su-Len and Hathaway were now. It used to be inhabited by Arcanists, and the environment was the best. However, after the war, it was the most damaged area in the entire mysterious realm. Not many buildings were still intact. The warehouse area and the production area were also badly damaged. According to the original plan of the mysterious realm, there should be an alchemy workshop in the production area that could produce many magic items, potions, and so on. There was even a production line for golems here. However, the production area was now in ruins. The production line should have been destroyed a long time ago. As for the warehouse area, which stored a large number of materials and produced items, it was also in a mess. As for the things here, if they were not used up, then they were directly snatched away. Basically, there was nothing left. The entertainment area was not badly damaged, but there was basically nothing valuable here. The arena, the opera house, the health center, and so on were basically worthless. There was also a library here, but unfortunately, it was also destroyed. Although Su-Len had gained control of the mysterious realm, it was still in ruins. If he wanted to use it, he would have to repair it bit by bit. The amount of work required to repair the mysterious realm was huge, but there were also many benefits after the repair. The most obvious one was that he could grow a lot of magical plants here. However, the most important thing now was to hide the mysterious realm again. Su-Len left the mysterious realm with Hathaway. When they returned to the Thorn Forest, the camp had been completed. According to Sullen's instructions, the soldiers of Northtown City had sealed off the forest. The goblins, kobolds, and gnolls around the area had all been driven away. "Master, you're back," Kate said respectfully. "Did anyone come close to the forest while I was away?" Su-Len asked. "Sir, I haven't noticed anyone approaching this place during this period of time." Su-Len nodded and praised, "Well done. Continue to seal this place." After a simple meal, Su-Len brought Hathaway back to Northern Citadel. Repairing the mysterious realm required a lot of materials, including silver, gold, copper, iron, magic crystals, mithril, magic gemstones, and so on. Luckily, Northern Citadel was already prosperous enough. It had all kinds of resources. Silver, gold, and other precious metals could be taken out from the castle's warehouse. He had looted the Grey Dwarf's collection for a few hundred years, so he had plenty of them. It was the same for the magic gems. As for the copper and iron, some would be transported from blacksmiths and some would be purchased directly. The magic crystals were a bit more troublesome since there were no crystal mines in the Sulen territory. There were crystal mines in the underground world, but they were scattered and needed people to mine them. He didn't have a lot of mithril, but the silver mine that the Grey Dwarf Bach was mining did produce mithril. Although it wasn't much, it was more than enough to repair the mysterious realm. After spending 3 days preparing all the materials needed to repair the mysterious realm, Sulen left the matters of Northern Citadel to Chris. He then brought Hathaway to the Northern Citadel again. There were all kinds of mutated plants in the thorn forest. Although the man-eating flowers and trees were dangerous, they also ensured the safety of the mysterious realm. Sulen and Hathaway had already experienced this before, so they easily avoided the man-eating plants. They then used the hypnosis powder to pass through the sea of purple tulips and return to the mysterious realm. "Welcome back, Mr. Sulen and Ms. Hathaway." Tower Spirit Number 1's voice rang out. "Tower Spirit Number 1, did anyone else enter the mysterious realm when we left?" Sulen asked. "No." "That's good. Show me the blueprint." "As you wish." As Tower Spirit Number 1's voice rang out, a 3D image appeared in front of the two along with the blueprint. Hathaway cast a photographic image spell and stored the information in a magic crystal. Then the two began to repair the mysterious realm according to the blueprint. The first thing to be repaired was the ley line nodes. When the mysterious realm was first built, rune pillars were placed on all the ley line nodes to connect and organize the ley line energy. These rune pillars were the foundation of the mysterious realm space folding spell. This was the direct reason why the mysterious realm was damaged. According to the red dots on the 3D map, Sulen and Hathaway quickly found a ley line energy node. These locations were originally classified as the mysterious realm's secrets, but they were easily found with the blueprint. Hathaway used her power of the will to search and soon found something strange. She then used her mana to search for the rune pillars. Found it. It's 30 meters underground. Hathaway soon opened her eyes. "Get up and let me do it." Sulen took out a small flag from his storage space. Then he waved it gently and directly summoned 2 wind elementals. Stone to mud. With a flash of light, the originally hard ground turned into mud. Then the 2 wind elementals entered the mud under Sulen's command. A large amount of mud was pulled out by the wind elementals. After the mud was extracted, Sulen cast stone to mud again and let the 2 wind elementals work. Soon, after repeating a few times, a deep hole was easily dug out. Then they took out the rune pillars buried inside. This step was a bit difficult because the rune pillars were connected to the ley line energy. They had to cut off the connection between the rune pillars and the ground. Originally, there was a rune formation at the ley line energy node to suppress the ley line, but this rune formation had been damaged long ago. Hathaway could only make a rune formation herself. Fortunately, this kind of rune formation was not difficult for Hathaway. After setting up the rune formation, Sulen moved the rune pillars. The ley line energy began to vibrate. Hathaway activated the rune formation. A yellow light flashed, and then the ley line energy calmed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Sulen immediately took out the rune pillars from the ground. This was a rune pillar about 3 meters long and 20 centimeters in diameter. There were many runes engraved on it, but because of the long time and lack of maintenance, many of the runes on this rune pillar had been blurred. It was the failure of these runes that caused the ley line energy node to lose its original function. After taking out the rune pillars, Hathaway cleaned up the rune pillars and then smelted them again. The rune pillars were made of an alloy called thorium. Thorium was a synthetic metal invented during the Arcane Empire. This metal had high plasticity, good magic conductivity, and stable properties. It was used in many places. The main metal of this alloy was silver. At first, it was to develop a metal that could replace mithril. However, the effect was far from what was expected, but it was still a good magic metal. Hathaway summoned psionic fire, then melted the rune pillars again and added some other materials. Thorium was a magic alloy that had been around for thousands of years. After inheriting part of the Arcanists' knowledge, although the wizards did not restore the original glorious civilization of the Arcanists, they also made breakthroughs in some fields. Thorium was one of them. After the rune pillars were melted, Hathaway operated the wizard's hand to shape the rune pillars. Sulen also summoned the wizard's hand to help. Finally, he released a frostbeam to cool down the rune pillars. After the rune pillars were refined, the runes needed to be engraved again. The runes that needed to be engraved on the thorium pillars were backed up by the Tower Spirit No. 1. The Tower Spirit No. 1 had a lot of knowledge from the Arcane Empire in its database, which was basically about the secret realm. It was not an exaggeration to say that as long as one learned all the knowledge, one could build a new secret realm like this. When the Arcane Empire built the secret realm, they kept a backup of the secret realm's production technology and blueprints. These were originally reserved for the restoration of the secret realm. Now, all of them were taken advantage of by Sulen. Hathaway took out several items such as gem powder, gold, silver, grind water, and so on to fuse them. After the materials were fused, she took out a fine gold carving knife and began to engrave the runes on the thorium pillars. The fine gold carving knife was very sharp. Under the operation of the wizard's hand, it began to work quickly. Hathaway had memorized the runes that needed to be engraved on the thorium pillars very clearly. Once she started, it was done smoothly. Soon, the new runes were engraved, and a rune pillar was completed. After a series of tests to meet the requirements, Sulen and Hathaway once again put the rune pillars back to their original place, and then restored the ground to its original state. There was a flash of light, and the space magic circle, which had been somewhat scattered, began to stabilize. After seeing the effect of the repair, the two went to the next damaged earth vein node according to the repair drawings given by the Tower Spirit. There were more than 100 such earth vein nodes in the entire secret realm. This time, more than 20 of them were damaged. It would take a lot of effort to repair all of them. However, even if these earth vein nodes were all repaired, the space-folding rune array of the secret realm was still not completed. If the secret realm was regarded as a net, the earth vein nodes were the nodes of the net, and the energy channels were the network cables of the fishing net. Only when the fishing net was in a complete state could the entire secret realm be hidden in the space-folding rune array. Chapter 243. The amount of work needed to repair the secret plane was very large, so the two of them had been busy for a while. However, this wasn't without benefits. For example, Sullen's wizard rank had increased. After repairing a large number of rune pillars, Su Luan's wizard knowledge and experience had increased. Although he would no longer be rewarded with attribute points when he leveled up, the number of spells he could cast had increased, and he had also learned some wizard abilities. After spending around a week, the two of them had finally finished repairing all the rune pillars. Next, they needed to repair the energy channel here. Compared to the rune pillars, the energy channel was much simpler. During this time, the Grey Dwarves had also dug out large amounts of magic crystals from the underground world. Actually, magic crystals could be artificially synthesized, but Hathaway didn't have time to make them. Although the crystal veins in the underground world were scattered, there were still plenty of magic crystals. Building the energy channel didn't require high-quality magic crystals. The magic crystals from the underground world had already been sorted out. The high-quality magic crystals were placed separately, while the normal magic crystals were put into special alchemy furnaces to be melted and shaped. The energy channel made by these magic crystals needed to be engraved with runes and then buried back into the energy channel. The secret plane lacked maintenance before, so there were many damaged energy channels. Although the energy channels were damaged more than the rune pillars, the repair speed was much faster than the rune pillars. After repairing all the damaged energy channels, Sulen went to the elemental pool again. He opened the link to the elemental pool and the blue elemental water began to flow through the energy channel into the secret plane. After the energy channel was repaired, even the original plantation had its energy supply restored. The entire secret plane's energy network was connected. As the elemental pool's energy entered the rune pillars, the rune pillars began to flicker with magic light, and the space around them began to wrinkle. If one stood in the air and observed, they would find that the sea of flowers in the forest had suddenly become distorted. Space began to distort and fold before finally disappearing. The large amount of purple tulips in the thorn forest seemed to have never appeared before and disappeared without a trace. As for the sunwell flowers, caraman's trees, blood brambles and other mutant plants, a portion of them were still within the boundary of the secret realm and were kept in the thorn forest. Su Len didn't try to catch the mutated plants that had escaped to the outside world. These mutated plants could also grow in the outside world, and although a completely wild environment would prolong their maturation time, the magical materials harvested were slightly better than those cultivated by humans. After the space folding array in the secret realm was repaired, Su Len heard the sound of the system notification. Congratulations, host. You have completed the restoration of the secret realm. Your control over the secret realm has increased by 30%. Congratulations, host. You have participated in the restoration of the arcane realm and gained a lot of experience in magical technology. Congratulations, host. You have repaired the mystic realm. You are rewarded with 1 golden treasure chest. Secret realm, unnamed. A damaged secret realm passed down from the era of the Arcane Empire. After the elemental energy shock caused by the elemental tide, it was restored after some repairs. Concealment +10, Elemental Abundance +17, Indestructible +15, Energy Circulation +18, Secret Realm Output +18, Space Barrier. After seeing that the secret realm was recognized by the system, Su Len was also very happy. However, although he had gained control of the secret realm, many facilities in the secret realm had been damaged and needed to be repaired bit by bit. Similarly, the magical plants in the planting area also needed to be planted. Su Len opened the storage space and then opened the golden treasure chest. A flash of light, Su Len heard the sound of the system notification again. Congratulations, host. You have opened the golden treasure chest and obtained the skill teleportation array. Teleportation array. This skill is the product of the integration of the teleportation array skill after the system integrated the rules of the world. It can transfer any creature or item to a designated location. It can transfer up to 50 people at a time, and this skill can be made into a permanent array. After seeing this skill, Sullen's eyes widened. The effect of the teleportation array in the previous game was average, but after integrating the rules of this world, it directly became a teleportation array. This world also had teleportation arrays and teleportation spells, but group teleportation spells like this were generally the technology of large wizard organizations. Ordinary wizards only had teleportation spells, and at most, they could bring a few people. This kind of group teleportation array was completely a strategic spell. It was very convenient to teleport to the enemy's rear or the front line. Of course, the premise was that the other party did not build a space isolation runic array on their territory. The teleportation array came at just the right time. Although the secret realm was completed, this secret realm was a little far from North City. It was more than 50 kilometers away, and it was a little inconvenient to travel between the two places. Now that there was a teleportation array, it was possible to build a teleportation array in the secret realm, and then build another one in North City. In this way, North City and the secret realm would be completely connected. Other than the secret realm and North City, the underworlds Orlando City and North City could also be connected by a runic array. There was also the Harpy's Eagle Nest. With the teleportation array, Su Len did not have to worry about the problem of expanding his territory. At the same time, he did not have to recruit a large number of soldiers in all the cities. As long as North City had enough soldiers, they could directly send reinforcements to other places if they were in danger. They could even launch airborne attacks. However, all of this was based on the teleportation array. Su Len chose to learn the teleportation array right away, but the awkward thing was that he did not have any skill points. Without skill points, he could not learn the skill quickly. However, that did not mean he could not learn it. Su Len could also choose to learn the skill through the skill scroll. The advantage was that he did not need skill points to learn the skill, but the disadvantage was that it would take a long time to learn. Of course, there was another way. The system sold a type of Styx's water in the shop. After using it, he could choose to forget one of his skills. After forgetting the skill, Su Len would regain the skill points that he had used to learn the skill. Su Len spent 50,000 kinner to buy a bottle of Styx's water. He took it out from his storage space. It was a kind of purple, half-transparent liquid. It was stored in a crystal bottle the size of a palm. The liquid shimmered as it swayed. It was said that the potion was created by refining the water from the Styx's river with a few other ingredients. After hesitating for a moment, Su Len twisted the cap open and drank the Styx's water. After drinking it, Su Len smacked his lips as if he had not had enough. It was sweet and orange, and it tasted pretty good. Please choose a skill that you would like to forget. All of Sullen's skills were displayed in front of him for him to choose. I choose to forget Scarlet Flame. Su Len, who had already made up his mind, chose the skill right away. Scarlet Flame was not that useful to him at the moment. To put it bluntly, it was just a skill that could create a large area of fire. However, a fireball skill could be used to set a fire, so it was much more effective than Scarlet Flame. After Su Len learned the fireball skill, Scarlet Flame could be retired. After choosing the skill, the Scarlet Flame skill on Sullen's system panel gradually disappeared. At the same time, the knowledge about the Scarlet Flame skill also disappeared from his mind. At the same time, Su Len gained one more skill point after the Scarlet Flame skill disappeared. After learning some teleportation, the skill point disappeared. Su Len gained a lot of knowledge about teleportation. After learning teleportation, Su Len started to check the things needed to build a teleportation circle. A teleportation circle needed a fixed rune circle and a lot of precious spatial materials. A teleportation circle would cost at least 1 million kinnar. Even Su Len was speechless at such a high price. However, it was worth it. With the help of the rune circle, North Town's control over the other cities would increase exponentially. Other than needing a lot of materials, a teleportation circle would also consume a lot of energy when it was used. Of course, this was not a problem in the secret plane. They could just build an energy channel from the elemental pool. The same was true for the teleportation circle in North Town. Hathaway was already a rank 4 wizard, so she was qualified to build a wizard tower. With the experience of repairing the elemental pool and the secret plane, Hathaway had already learned how to build an elemental pool. Su Len also planned to build a wizard tower for Hathaway. He also planned to move Hathaway's old lab into the wizard tower. With the abundant energy from the elemental pool, he could build a teleportation circle here. Other than using the energy from the elemental pool, there were other ways to activate the teleportation circle. For example, using a few wizards to provide energy or using an energy crystal as a substitute. However, this method was not very cost-effective. An energy crystal was not cheap. Each teleportation would cost at least 1 energy crystal. If there were a lot of people or a long distance, the cost would be even higher. Building a teleportation circle required a lot of materials. Some of them were very precious and hard to find, so Su Len could only buy some from the system. The most valuable one was the Void Break Stone, which cost 100,000 kinnar each. After spending a lot of kinnar to buy the materials, Su Len began to build the teleportation circle. With the help of Hathaway, the construction of the teleportation circle was very fast. In just a few hours, a teleportation circle was finally built. An energy channel was built from the elemental pool to the teleportation circle. Su Len chose to start it right away. After giving the teleportation permission, Su Len brought Hathaway to the teleportation platform. These coordinates were left by Hathaway in the lab. With a flash of light, the two disappeared from the secret plane. Chapter 244. Sullen's vision blurred, and in the next second, he appeared in a hall. Su Len looked at Hathaway in confusion. What's going on? Didn't they teleport to the lab? Why did they go straight back to the castle? The coordinates were wrong. Just a small error. Hathaway shrunk her neck and said awkwardly. Sulen glared at her and didn't pursue the matter. However, he had already decided that he would confirm the coordinates himself next time. The teleportation spell was very dangerous. It was convenient to teleport successfully, but the consequences would be equally serious if there was a mistake. For example, if they were teleported directly into mud or rocks, they would suffocate if they weren't strong enough, or they would be teleported to dangerous areas. In short, it was very dangerous if the coordinates were wrong. Sensing the spatial ripples in the hall, Chris quickly appeared here. Master, you're back. Chris was wearing a beautiful maid outfit, which accentuated her curvaceous figure. She had a different kind of charm. Although the maid outfit was a bit loose, it was obviously different on Chris. As Sullen's spokesperson, Chris was the highest officer when Sulen wasn't around. Sulen smiled and nodded, then reached out and patted her head. How's the development in the city? Did anything happen? Everything in the city is good. It's been developing according to your requirements. Mirror Lake City reported yesterday that they were a bit short on manpower, so I gave them the refugees we took in this month. Chris shook her head. Sulen smiled. Looks like Mirror Lake City is developing very well. Northtown City is developing well now. You can give them more support. Chris nodded to show that she understood. By the way, I'll take you to a good place in a few days. Sulen winked and smiled. Chris was a bit confused, but she still nodded obediently. By the way, Master, there's a man who says he's a messenger from the Kingdom of Florence who wants to see you. I don't have time to see him now. Let him wait. Sulen waved his hand and prepared to go upstairs. After a few days of high-intensity work, although he didn't feel too tired physically, he was mentally exhausted and needed to rest. After a brief explanation, Sulen yawned and went back to sleep. After resting for a day, Sulen got up in high spirits. Sulen changed his clothes and went to take a look at the city. After a year of development, Northern City now had a population of 25,000. If you counted the goblins, kobolds, gnolls, orcs, and other slaves, the population of Northern City had exceeded 40,000. It was considered a medium-sized city in the northern provinces. After all, there were only 3 large cities like Kalt in the entire northern provinces. The streets of the city were straight, and all the roads were paved with a layer of stones or slabs. It would not be muddy when it rained, and there would not be dust when it was sunny. The streets were very clean. Even the horses that passed by had a bag hanging behind them, which was specially used to collect horse dung. Northern Town had very high standards for hygiene. If a horse urinated or defecated in the town, it would be charged to the owner. Not only would the owner be fined, but the owner would also have to do volunteer work. Later on, when the fertilizer factory in Northern Town began to produce, the horse dung would be collected. A bag of horse dung could be sold for 2 copper nars. Flower beds were built on both sides of the roads, where all kinds of green plants were planted. Flowers bloomed all year round. At the same time, there were fountains on the streets, gardens, and plazas. The streets were full of people. Although it was busy, everything seemed to be in order. The taverns were buzzing with activity. The vodka produced in Northern Town was very popular in the north. Apart from soldiers on vacation, grey dwarves, and guards from other caravans, the grey dwarves were also there. The grey dwarves loved to drink the most. Vodka was a strong liquor, and ordinary people could not drink much of it. The grey dwarves were very satisfied with their current lives. They used to work for the king, but now they worked for Sulen. However, working for Sulen meant that they could get better food and liquor. Their stingy king would not give them vodka. The stubborn, cunning, and tenacious grey dwarves were very loyal to Sulen. After strolling around the taverns, Sulen came to the trade market. The trade market was the most prosperous area in Northern Town. More than 100 caravans gathered here. Apart from the caravans from the northern provinces, caravans from the southern provinces had also set up their own chambers of commerce here. Even the Desert Kingdom, the Terrence Kingdom, and the Holy Six Lights Alliance in the south had set up offices here. There were dates, carpets, cotton, raisins, dried fruits, and female slaves from the desert kingdom, pottery, palm oil, olive oil, wine, and spices from the Holy Six Lights Alliance in the south, and gemstones, obsidian, tea leaves from the Lotus Kingdom. There were all kinds of goods here. Apart from sugar and rum, vodka was also very popular in Northern Town. It looked clear and transparent, but it tasted like a ball of fire in the mouth. It was very popular in the north. The paper produced in Northern Town City had become another popular product. At the same time, the quality of weapons in Northern Town City had improved once again due to the presence of a large group of dwarven blacksmiths. Many merchant groups purposely came to Northern Town City to buy the high-quality dwarven equipment. Just last month, the business tax collected in Northern Town had reached over 10,000 k'nir. It could be seen how prosperous Northern Town was from this tax. Northern Town had many names in the mouths of these merchants, such as the City of Wealth, the Pearl of the Northern Kingdoms, and so on. They also praised the few magnificent buildings in Northern Town. The most famous ones were the Arc de Triomphe and the Aqueduct system. The Arc de Triomphe was majestic and magnificent, and the aqueduct system was also called a miracle. The harvest altar was mysterious because Sulen did not allow people to get close to it. It was said that after King Henry III of the Kingdom of Florence heard about the Arc de Triomphe, he also announced that such a magnificent building would be built in the central avenue of the city to sing his praises. Sulen walked around the city and went to see the training of the winged dragon knights. After a few months of feeding, these Cryopteris had entered the growth period. Each of them had grown to the size of a bison, and their wingspan was over 5 meters. The nest and training ground they were living in were specially built. Inside, other than the +15 comfortable environment, +15 training progress, +18 energy recovery, +17 coordination, there were also the +18 accelerated growth, +20 sturdiness, and other rare attributes. According to the growth rate of these Cryopteris, they would reach adulthood in less than 4 years. Perhaps in 2 or 3 years, Northern Town would have a squad of winged dragon knights. When Sulen returned to the castle, Alex had returned from the Eagle Fortress. She looked like a queen now. With the support of Northern Town's resources, as the Queen of the Harpies, her appearance had skyrocketed. She looked very elegant. Sulen felt a sense of accomplishment every time he discussed the true meaning of life. She and the little succubus were the strongest fighters among Sulen's maids. "Alex, how are the Harpies doing lately? Are there any problems?" Sulen asked with a smile. "The children love the nest master built," Alex said excitedly. Also, another Harpy leader has become a Harpy recently. Although Suluen's eagle nest didn't have a high effect of evolution, there were thousands of Harpies. It was normal for 1 or 2 of them to evolve. During this time, the Harpies had also cooperated with the soldiers of Northern Battlefront City to train and fight. They had also gained a lot of combat experience. "Master, the eagle nest has consumed a lot of food recently," Alex said. "Go find Chris later and ask her to send you some food," Sulen nodded. "Oh, right. Go and choose the weapons you want to use. I'll ask the blacksmith to produce them and send them to you." Since the Harpies' arms and wings were connected, it was inconvenient for them to use weapons. However, once they evolved into Harpies, their arms would be separated from their wings. That way, they could use weapons. Bows, javelins, spears, etc. "But they'll be lighter," Alex said after thinking for a moment. As aerial units, these weapons were very suitable for them. "All right, I understand." After returning to the castle, Sulen arranged everything. He asked people to collect materials for the teleportation circle. At the same time, the construction of the Wizard Tower was put on the agenda. The Wizard Tower required a large amount of obsidian. There were no obsidian mines in the northern citadel. The obsidian mines in the underground world were also poor. If they wanted to obtain a large amount of obsidian, they would have to go to the caravans of the Loftus Kingdom. Sulen asked the City Hall to sign a long-term supply contract with the merchants of the Loftus Kingdom. He was ready to buy a large amount of obsidian. It was important to know that not only did the wizard tower need obsidian, but also the restoration of the secret realm in the future. Hathaway was also preparing to build some obsidian stone statues and ghost statues. This would require even more obsidian. The cost of building a wizard tower was at least a few million kinnar. Fortunately, Sulan had made a fortune. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to support his girlfriend. There was a question in the noble circle. How did it feel to have a witch as a lover or a wife? Thanks for the invitation. She was in the northern citadel. Sulan could tell him that it was best not to look for a witch if they didn't have a net worth of tens of millions. It was too expensive. Also, it was not recommended to try it if their body wasn't strong enough. In other words, witches had to be normal, beautiful, and proficient in all kinds of spells. They always liked to add some fun when exploring the mysteries of life. For example, grease, shape-shifting, shadow tentacles, giant transformation, shrinking, and so on. If you were strong enough, it would definitely be a pleasure. Chapter 245. The basic materials for building the teleportation array were quickly prepared. Sulan finally built the teleportation array in the mayor's mansion. At the same time, Hathaway's wizard tower would also be built next to the lord's castle. According to Hathaway's blueprint, the height of the wizard tower would eventually reach 120 meters. It would cover an area larger than the lord's mansion. This wizard tower would be big enough for a legendary wizard. Sulan thought about it and agreed. After all, Hathaway was destined to become a legendary wizard, and the construction speed of the wizard tower was not fast. If he built an ordinary wizard tower, Hathaway might become a legendary wizard in a few years. It would be better to build it directly. In fact, this 120-meter-tall wizard tower was still dwarfed by the wizard towers of the Arcane Kingdom. The wizard towers of the Arcane Kingdom were basically 300 meters tall. This was because many wizard towers were upgraded to become floating cities. However, most wizard towers did not receive this treatment in the end. To build a floating city, not to mention other costs, the cost of the basic construction and materials was almost 100 million kinnar. In addition to the various facilities of the floating city, even in the era of the Arcane Kingdom, after thousands of years of accumulation, the number of floating cities was not more than 100. It was a huge empire that spanned more than a dozen dimensions. In addition to the obsidian, a lot of steel was also needed to build the wizard tower. The current steel production in North City was not bad. Fortunately, the construction of the wizard tower was gradual. Otherwise, steel would also have to be purchased. After preparing the materials, Sulan bought the void break stone from the system shop and then built it with Hathaway. In fact, the cost of a single teleportation array was only 200,000 kinnar. The price of a group teleportation array rose to 1 million kinnar. As the main city of Sulan, it was necessary to build a group teleportation array. Although a single teleportation array was convenient, cheap, and energy-consuming, it did not make much sense if it could not quickly teleport an army. With the experience in the secret realm last time, Sulan and Hathaway quickly built the teleportation array. They linked the teleportation array with the secret realm's teleportation array, and they could directly teleport from North City to the secret realm. After completing the teleportation portal, Sulan brought Hathaway, Chris, and Alex to the secret realm. The concentration of elemental energy here is so high. As soon as he entered, Alex felt something different. Of course, there's an intermediate elemental pool here, Sulan explained. What do you think? This secret realm covers an area of more than 300 square kilometers. Now, it all belongs to us, Sulan said excitedly. Now, you can all choose a piece of land to use. The secret realm was over 300 square kilometers in size and had a diameter of about 20 kilometers. It was about the size of a small city in Feng Lin's previous life. There were mountains, rivers, and forests in this secret realm. The ancient arcanists used their powerful technology to create a perfect ecosystem here. Although most of the ecosystem was destroyed because of the war, there was a backup in Tower Spirit No. 1. It just needed to be repaired. Really? I'll have to think about how to use it, Alex said happily. Master, welcome back. Tower Spirit number 1's voice sounded. Hello, Tower Spirit. Set their level of authority to level 5. The highest level of authority in the secret realm was level 6, which was Sulen and Hathaway. Level 1 authority was the lowest, which was only for tourists. Level 2 authority was for ordinary staff here, mostly apprentices. They could only move around in the living and working areas. Level 3 authority was much better, and he could live here. Only official wizards could obtain this authority, but there were still many areas that he could not enter. Level 4 authority was equivalent to the manager of each area. In the secret plane, apart from the most important areas, he could enter the rest. As for level 5 authority, there were basically no restrictions. Yes, Master. Setting authority. Setting complete. A beam of blue light shone on Chrissy and Alex. This light could record their appearance, energy waves, smell, and even their soul imprint. This technique was also a masterpiece of the ancient arcanists. The wizards of today still couldn't do it. Master, the space-folding portal of the secret realm has been repaired, but the other functions of the secret realm are still incomplete. Please fix it as soon as possible, Tower Spirit number 1 reminded. Got it. Sulen had a headache. Repairing the secret realm and building wizard towers required a lot of resources and manpower. Sulen could find and buy resources, but he was seriously short of manpower. Master, you can try to repair the golems. There are still 56 steel golems in the secret realm. 33 of them are worth repairing. You can replace the parts from the other damaged golems, Tower Spirit number 1 suggested. There are still so many golems. Sullen's eyes flashed. He knew about the steel golems. A complete steel golem was a level 4 one. Not only did it have energy, but it was also very strong in close combat. It was very good except for the lack of air combat. The last time he encountered a steel golem, it didn't have enough energy, so many of its functions were not activated. But now, with the elemental pool, there was no need to worry about energy. After learning that there were 33 steel golems that could be repaired, Sulen immediately took Hathaway, Chris, and Alex to collect all the remains of the steel golems. Master, the secret realm needs a lot of manpower. I'll ask the harpies to come and help, Alex said. Alex had absolute control over the harpies, so there was no need to worry about them betraying her. Besides, the harpies were quite strong. Sulen thought about it and agreed. I'll build a new eagle nest for them in the secret realm. Thank you, Master. Alex suddenly hugged Sulen and kissed him. She then smiled and left through the teleportation portal. About an hour later, the teleportation portal lit up again. Alex brought 20 harpies to the secret realm. After evolution, the harpies were very similar to humans. Except for the wings and the claws on their feet, they were not much different from humans. However, when they evolved into elite harpies, their claws would become feet. At that time, they would be similar to Alex. However, none of the harpies had reached that level yet. Sulen let the harpies clean up the ruins according to Tower Spirit number 1's repair plan. He, Hathaway, and Alex worked together to repair the steel golems. As for Chris, she stayed in the secret realm for a while and then returned to Northern Battlefront City. After all, the city needed her now. The first to be repaired were the steel golems that Sulen and Hathaway destroyed last time. Those few steel golems were the least damaged. As long as the energy centers were reconnected and the broken legs were repaired, they would be fine. The control centers of the golems were originally with Tower Spirit number 1. After Sulen became the master of the secret realm and obtained the highest authority, he also obtained the right to command the golems. Some of the control centers of the golems were damaged. Hathaway had to use large soul crystals to make new ones. Fortunately, only a few of the control centers were damaged. Otherwise, Sulen's few large soul crystals would not be enough. After more than an hour, the first steel golem was finally repaired. Tower Spirit number 1, open the energy channel and charge this golem. Yes, Master. With Sullen's order, the energy channel in the elemental pool opened. A gust of blue elemental energy was transferred to the steel golem through the energy channel. After receiving the energy, the steel golem's dark eyes slowly lit up. The golem was reactivated. Steel guard number 027 is activated. Charging, activation complete. Master, steel guard number 027 is at your service. Check if there are any problems with the golem, Sulen ordered. Begin self-examination. Self-examination complete. The golem is in good condition. Looks like it's done. Sulen nodded with satisfaction. Tower Spirit number 1, give it a job. Yes, Master. Then, Tower Spirit number 1 began to assign tasks to the steel golems. The steel golems in the Arcana land were all-purpose golems. They could be used for both fighting and work. As long as there was an energy supply, these steel golems did not need to rest at all and could work continuously. With these steel golems, the repair work in the Arcana land would be much faster. Next, Sulen and the other two continued to repair the golems. With the experience of the first golem, the repair of the next few golems was much faster. These golems were all damaged in the same place, so the repair was not difficult. 3 hours later, the other 3 steel golems were all repaired. After they were reactivated, these golems were assigned to work. While repairing the golems, Sulen once again gained experience in magical craftsmanship. He felt that it would not be long before he could master this craftsmanship. The craftsmanship of the steel golems was still very complicated. Sulen and Hathaway could not understand many parts. It was several times more complicated than the craftsmanship of the stone golems. Although they did not understand some of the craftsmanship, it did not affect the repair. The repair plan given by Tower Spirit number 1 was very detailed. Most of the time, they would directly remove parts from the scrapped steel golems and replace them. The parts in these steel golems were basically universal. According to Tower Spirit number 1, these steel golems were products produced by the same golem production line. The repaired steel golems began to clean up the ruins in the Arcana land. These ruins needed to be rebuilt. The building materials were not discarded and would be used to repair other buildings. At the same time, a large number of skeletons in the Arcana land also needed to be cleaned up. There were many undead creatures in the Arcana land. These undead creatures also needed to be cleaned up. All the skeletons would be sent out for burial. The undead aura in the Arcana land also needed to be cleaned up. Otherwise, undead creatures would still be born. Chapter 246. Most of the ecosystem in the secret mirror had been damaged, and it would take some time to rebuild it. However, with 33 steel golems, Sulen only needed to provide the materials and let the tower genie command the golems to work. Only the work that the steel golems couldn't do would be done by Sulen and Hathaway. The working capacity of more than 30 steel golems had surpassed that of a construction team of more than 1,000 people. These steel golems were all powerful and tireless. After giving the task of repairing the secret realm to Tower Spirit number 1, Sulen began to prepare for the planting area. He was going to plant some commonly used magic plants in the planting area, but he didn't have many magic plant seeds, so he could only plant them as he collected them. Also, the work of planting magic plants could not be done by steel golems. It could only be done by humans. Many magic plants were dangerous, so normal people couldn't plant them. Only wizard apprentices could do it. Sulen didn't build a wizard academy, so he didn't have so many free labor. However, he had his own way. Alex's harpies were very good. Although they were not wizard apprentices, they were quite strong. They could take care of magic plants. The only problem was that there were not many of them. The planting area opened up in the secret mirror was very large, and it was impossible to plant everything with only a few people. A secret mirror like this was more than enough to support a wizard organization. In the planting area, Sulen gave the seeds of Peace Bloom, Golden Thorn, Silver Star, and more than a dozen other magic plant seeds to the harpies for them to plant. Many places in the planting area had not been repaired, but it was not urgent. Maybe when he was strong enough, Su Len would build a wizard academy. After returning from the secret mirror, Su Len finally remembered that the messenger from the kingdom of Florence was still waiting to see him. Su Len could guess the purpose of the messenger's visit. It was most likely about his title. "Ask the messenger from the kingdom of Florence to see me," Su Len said to the servant next to him. "Yes, sir." Soon, the servant brought a middle-aged man in his 30s to Su Len's study. "Good day, Your Excellency Su Len." The middle-aged man bowed elegantly. "Good day, I'm sorry to have kept Mr. Messenger waiting for so long. The territory has just been established, and there are many things that need to be done." Su Len apologized, but there was no apologetic expression on his face. "We understand that His Excellency Su Len is busy." "Right, what's your name?" "Robert Monroe, nice to meet you, Mr. Su Len," Robert said with a smile. "Please sit down, Mr. Robert. I wonder what brings Mr. Messenger to this remote place." Su Len continued after inviting him to sit down. "Sir Su Len is too humble. Even a child in the Northern Lands has heard of the title of the Pearl of the Northern Lands." Robert shook his head. "The bards in Cult are singing about your heroic deeds. You are very famous in the Northern Lands. At first, I thought they were exaggerating, but after coming to Northern City, I realized that the rumors were not exaggerated at all. You have created a miracle. In just 1 year, you have built such a big city in the wilderness." Hearing Robert's compliment, Su Len immediately raised his guard. Robert was the messenger of the kingdom, so there was no need for him to curry favor with him. Now, he was lowering himself so much. No one would believe that he had nothing to ask for. The sugar, rum, and paper in Northern City are all in high demand in the kingdom of Florence. What you see is just the surface. Northern Citadel is on the verge of collapsing. To prevent the monsters from attacking, I have to form a huge army. Northern Citadel's army now accounts for 1/3 of its population. Most importantly, these soldiers aren't farmers. They are all professional soldiers. The cost every month is making my heart ache, Su Len said, shaking his head. Although he was complaining, it was more like he was trying to show off his muscles. Many people want to experience this kind of pain, but they can't. Robert shook his head. "I am here to invite you on behalf of the Royal Parliament," Robert said with a smile. Robert smiled and said, "Mr. Surin, you've successfully opened up a new territory, and it's developing well. The noble parliament has approved your achievement. You can now design your own family badge and go to Cult to receive your title. I remember that the standard for successful development is 3 to 5 years. I don't think I have reached the standard yet." Su Len was not happy about being recognized by the royal parliament. Instead, he asked calmly. "According to the kingdom's standard, it will take 3 to 5 years. But your territory is developing so well that the royal parliament has approved that you don't have to wait 3 years." Robert shook his finger. "I see." Su Len nodded in agreement. However, he knew that this was just a piece of paper. There were some merchants who wanted to obtain aristocratic status. The best way to do so was to buy a land expansion order, find a place to develop, and then spend money to bribe the aristocratic parliament to recognize them as aristocrats. They didn't care about territory, they just wanted to obtain aristocratic status. Of course, you have to know that we are taking a huge risk by doing this. So, we need your support. Robert winked at Su Len and gave him a knowing look. However, Robert was going to be disappointed. He and the royal parliament did not know that Su Len had never thought of gaining their recognition. Su Len had planned to build a new kingdom from the very beginning. Joining the royal parliament and gaining the rights to develop a territory as well as the title of a count was not something that Su Len had planned to accept from the very beginning. If he accepted their title, it would mean that Su Len had joined the kingdom of Florence. If it was just for the title, he could have done it with his legendary level strength. There was no need for him to go through so much trouble to develop a territory in the north. However, Su Len did not plan to fall out with the kingdom of Florence. After all, more than half of the trade routes to the northern city had to pass through the provinces in the north. Moreover, the northern city gained a large number of people from the provinces in the north every month. If they fell out with the Kingdom of Florence, not only would the trade routes be blocked, but the recruitment of refugees would also be interrupted. Of course, even if they fell out with the Kingdom of Florence, there would still be trade routes coming to Sulen. However, the price would definitely be affected. They would take the opportunity to lower the price and sell it at a high price under the pretext of the border blockade. There was no doubt about that. There had been such cases in the history of his previous life and the history of this world. The most classic example was the sea ban policy of the Ming dynasty in his previous life. On one hand, they were trying to stop the country from opening up the sea. On the other hand, they were trying to smuggle goods. They used the sea ban to kill all their competitors and monopolize the unimaginable profits. Thank you so much, but I have too many things to do in my territory now. I can't leave for the time being, so I can't go to Calant's city to accept the title. Sulen was overjoyed at first, but then he looked regretful. His acting was so good that he could win an Oscar. Well, but to thank the Royal Parliament for their help, I can give you 3 trade quotas. Each quota allows you to buy 50 kilograms of sugar and 100 barrels of rum from the northern city every month. Sulen offered the bait. Sulen did not know how many people there were in the Royal Parliament, but they would definitely fight for the 3 quotas. Based on the Royal Parliament's character, as long as there were enough benefits, they would not care who you were. These quotas were enough for the Royal Parliament to fight for a while. As for the 3 quotas, it was not a loss for Sulen at all. Since last month, the sugar beets planted in the northern city had started to mature batch after batch. The production of the northern city sugar refinery had increased from 600 kilograms of sugar per month to 1,000 kilograms of sugar per month, and this number was still increasing. Sulen estimated that the production of sugar would exceed a ton in 2 months at most. With more sugar, there would naturally be a need for more trading quotas. Giving them 3 quotas would not only show their friendliness, but also bring them benefits. Why not? Hearing that Sulen could give them 3 trading quotas, Robert was overjoyed. After all, the aristocratic parliament had been jealous of the previous caravans for a long time because they had monopolized the sugar trade in the northern town and made a lot of money. If it were not for the fact that those caravans were backed by big nobles, they would have snatched them long ago. Now that they had 3 quotas from Sulen, it was naturally the best outcome. Of course, there are conditions for these 3 quotas as well. Seeing Robert's uncontrollable excitement, Sulen smiled in his heart. Northern City is preparing to train some grassroots officials, and we lack some scholars as teachers. Therefore, I hope that the nobles with the quotas can help me find some scholars to teach in the Northern City. They don't need to be famous scholars, as long as they can teach basic education. No problem, Sir Sulen. We will send the scholars you need over soon. Hearing Sulen's request, Robert did not mind at all. Although there were not many literate scholars in this era, there were many of them in the circle of nobles. After all, many people learned these things to serve the nobles. Moreover, many of the nobles' children had received education and could be teachers. As long as they were willing, they could easily find a few hundred scholars. Then I look forward to working with you, Sulen said with a smile. I look forward to working with you. Robert was also full of smiles, as if he had earned a great deal. Sulen laughed in his heart. Although you earn money, I will not lose money. Chapter 247. After discussing the matter with Robert, Sulen signed 3 blank trade permits, and Robert left in a hurry. Since the dimensional folding circle of the mysterious realm had been repaired, the Northgard Castle soldiers outside the mysterious realm had all retreated. The Northgard city's army was mobilized again. In the wilderness where the Northgard city was located, there were no more powerful factions that could fight a large-scale war against them. Most of the time, there were only small skirmishes. The monsters in the wilderness were like weeds. If you were not careful, they could grow very quickly. Summer was the time when food was the most abundant in the northern wilderness. The number of kobolds, goblins, and gnolls had started to increase. To deal with the situation, Su Len changed the way the army fought. Lancers, archers, centaur riders, and the newly recruited harpies were reorganized into small armies. They were then led by their own generals to clean up the areas around the Northgard city. The Northgard city had started to clear out the monsters and bandits in their territory again. Of course, it was not realistic to completely wipe out the kobolds, goblins, and gnolls. After all, these races were very good at reproducing. They could only reproduce in groups. Sullen's plan was to keep their numbers to a low level. After a few years, the number of goblins, kobolds, and gnolls would gradually decrease. Just like in the southern provinces, there were basically no gnolls left in the wilderness. Even the number of kobolds and goblins was very low. It was the result of decades of hard work. If the other nobles could do it, so could Su Luen. Moreover, he had a strategic map. As long as the goblins, kobolds, and bandits were discovered, they would be marked on the map. Since the battlefield was one-sided and transparent, it was not difficult to eliminate these bandits. With the help of the harpies, the vision of the northern fortress city's army had increased by a few times. Their current strategy had changed from a rain of arrows and spearmen to an aerial assault by the harpies, archers, and centaurs. Most of the time, there were not many enemies left by the time the spearmen reached the front line. The uninjured monsters were enslaved, and the injured ones were killed for experience. While the northern battlefront city army was cleaning up, Su Len also came to the training ground of the formation breaker outside the city. After this period of training, this group of Imperial Spear Guards had all completed their training. Today was the day they would advance to the formation breaker. The success rate of the formation breaker's advancement was only 1/5. Su Len gave each of the Spear Guards a light ball and let them advance. Time went by. This time, there were as many as 16 Spear Guards who participated in the advancement. Su Luen waited quietly outside. After about 15 minutes, light balls began to return to the tiger-shaped tally of the formation breaker, which meant that someone had failed to advance. Su Len was mentally prepared for this result. Soon, 2 more light balls returned to Su Len within a few minutes. As time passed, more and more light balls returned to Sullen's hand. Very quickly, the time had already reached the last 10 minutes. The advancement of the capture barracks, as long as they could endure through this last period of time, it represented that they had successfully advanced. It was just that there were only 5 people remaining. Just then, Su Luen felt that another light ball had returned to the tiger tally, and there were only 4 people who were still advancing. Time passed by. Su Len became more and more nervous. Soon, there were only 5 minutes left. A light flashed and disappeared. Another light ball returned. In the end, there were only 3 people left. In the last 5 minutes, Su Len felt like a year. Finally, the system's notification sounded in his ears. Congratulations, host. 3 of your spear guards have successfully advanced to the formation breaker. The current number of formation breaker is 5. Seeing the 3 soldiers who had successfully advanced, Sullen's mood finally became better. Just as the northern battlefront city was developing rapidly, further north in the northern wilderness, the power of the elemental tide was constantly spreading. A large number of wild beasts had evolved into demon beasts. The races that lived here also felt threatened. Chief Rogthus, the team that went to the Great Glacier to explore, has returned. They brought back the latest news. In a huge tent, several orcs were discussing something. Outside the tent, tens of thousands of orcs were living in the wilderness. Since the last era, the orcs had been expelled by the humans, elves, and dwarves. They could only live in the barren northern wilderness. However, the orcs still did not give up on the fertile land in the south. Every 2 or 3 years, the orcs would carry out a large-scale invasion to the south. Every time this happened, the countries that bordered the northern wilderness would be the target of the orcs' attack. There was no strict border between the northern wilderness and the orcs. However, most of them relied on the terrain of the mountains to defend. Usually, the orcs would directly invade the southern wilderness. The northern battlefront city was not located on the main route of the orcs' army. When the northern battlefront city was first built, Su Len did not choose the north. Instead, he chose the northeast. He did not want to be the front line against the orcs. "Herr, how is the Great Glacier now?" the tall orc chief asked. "Chief, the situation is not good. We found traces of a white dragon," the orc named Herr said. After hearing Herr's words, the orc chief went silent for a moment and said, "Great shaman, it seems your prophecy was right. The situation we are facing now is very clear. In the coming days, more and more orcs will appear here. Our living environment will become more and more difficult. If we want the tribe to continue, there is only one way, and that is to go south. Citizens of Gawushan, now is the time of life and death. I, the chief of the Blackfire tribe, Rogthus, am officially telling you that we must obtain more fertile land to survive. The weak elves have fallen asleep, and the dwarves' kingdom has been divided. We only have to face the humans. As long as we defeat the humans, we can obtain the warm and fertile land under the sun. We have been silent for too long. It is time to let those despicable monkeys pay the price. Fight! 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 Fight!" The other orcs roared. More and more orcs began to roar. Soon, the entire camp had tens of thousands of orcs roaring. Their voices resounded through the sky. At the same time, the other orc tribes in the northern wilderness began to move at the same time. In the northern wilderness, the number of orcs living was no less than 1,000,000. According to the characteristics of all orcs being soldiers, they could easily form an army of 500,000 to 600,000. However, the beastmen usually didn't do this. The most fundamental reason was logistics. The beastmen didn't have enough food. If hundreds of thousands of beastmen gathered together, it wouldn't take long for them to starve to death. Therefore, the beastmen would usually unite with several tribes and form an army of around 50,000 people. They would then attack from multiple areas. The orcs began to move. A new round of war was about to begin. After dealing with the matters in the northern city, Su Len issued an order to purchase all kinds of magic plant seeds. At the same time, he began the next step of the restoration of the secret realm. There were many magic plants growing in the secret realm. In addition to the purple tulips, there were also mutated man-eating flowers, blood-sucking vines, and some amethyst bees. The ecological area in the secret realm had also begun to be restored. There were many wild herbs in the ecological area. Some of the herbs marked in Introduction to Potionology could be found here. Most of the magic plants were easy to deal with. The only troublesome one was the blood-sucking vines. These dark red thorny vines were a type of living vine. They would automatically attack nearby creatures. At the same time, they were poisonous. After killing their prey, they would drag it over and slowly digest it. The ecological area was very large. Although the original destruction was serious, it was slowly recovering. Earth, water, wind, fire. The Arcanists believed that these 4 elements were the basic composition of the world. They were also the prerequisite for the evolution of all matter. As the wizards who inherited the knowledge of the arcane empire, they also inherited this view. It was said that some legendary wizards would leave the main material plane and enter the astral world to roam other worlds. These wizards were called astral wizards. According to the information left behind by these astral wizards, they found that there were all kinds of planets. Some were solid, some were liquid, and some were gaseous. However, planets that could produce intelligent life had a kind of life force. Almost all of them had the characteristics of a fusion of these 3 types of planets. The great Arcanists believed that at the beginning of the multiverse, after the explosion of the source energy, the elemental planes of earth, water, wind, and fire were created. During the evolution, different types of planets were created due to the proportion of the elements. Those planets that could support life were mostly the result of the harmony of the 4 elements. Only this kind of harmonious plane could give birth to all kinds of creatures and finally become a prosperous plane. At the same time, the Arcanists' theory of constructing superlarge demiplanes originated from this. The Grand Arcanists believed that only a complete elemental balance could create a new world, a super-large demiplane that could allow life to flourish. Creating a world was not difficult. Basically, if a legendary wizard was willing to spend his life, he could create a relatively small half-plane world. However, no wizard would do so. The environment in the secret realm also had to comply with this requirement. If there was a problem with the ecological structure of the secret realm, it would collapse and be rebuilt. However, if there was a problem with the basic elemental structure, it would lead to the collapse of the secret realm. Therefore, Su Len had been strict when it came to restoring the secret realm. Chapter 248. Su Len was lying on the sofa in the castle at the center of the arcane mystery realm. He was watching a movie, not a movie, but a video. Tower Spirit Number 1 stored a large amount of information about the arcane mystery realm. These were the system backups left behind by the Arcanists. It was a timely help for Su Len to restore the arcane mystery realm. A 3D virtual image appeared in front of him. The 3D movies in his previous life were nothing compared to this. Thinking about the 3D movies in his previous life, other than the font being 3D, the image was basically no different from 2D. Moreover, there were all kinds of flaws. Looking at the 3D imaging technology of the Arcanists, it was like being in the real world. It was a waste to use this technology only to broadcast information. Fortunately, Su Len was a decent person. If those LSPs got their hands on this, they would watch movies every day. This is incredible. Su Len praised as he looked at the 3D image played by Tower Spirit Number 1. Although he had already overestimated the power of the Arcanists, he was still shocked by what he saw. In the final image of the ecological modification spell, there were wyverns, pterosaurs, and birds flying in the sky. On the ground, there were saber-toothed tigers, mammoths, gale tigers, flaming wildebeests, and other magical beasts strolling leisurely. These huge beasts walked past him as if they were alive. A mammoth walked right through Su Len. Its long trunk easily pulled out a small tree and brought it to its mouth. The mammoth took a few bites. Perhaps it didn't taste good, so it swung its trunk and threw it away. On the grassland, a saber-toothed tiger was lying on the ground. It quietly moved forward for a while before leaping out in an instant. The bison that was drinking water fled in fear. The saber-toothed tiger was very fast. It pounced on a strong bison and used its terrifying fangs to bite off the struggling bison's neck. All kinds of animals were vividly displayed in the image. Not only were there images, but there were also voices. The roars of the beasts and the rustling of the leaves in the wind were vivid. In addition to the creatures Su Len knew, there were many creatures that Su Len had never seen before. Those creatures were most likely extinct by now. The scene in front of him looked like a lush forest. Tower Spirit Number 1, do you have the technical information for this kind of virtual 3D imaging technology? Su Len asked directly. I'm sorry, Master. The virtual 3D imaging technology is not in the technical backup, so there is no information about it. Tower Spirit Number 1's voice sounded. What a pity. Su Len said with regret. However, although there is no information about virtual 3D imaging technology in the data, this technology is an improved version of magic image recording and sound recording. Master, you can research in this direction. I understand. Su Len nodded. Image was a 4th tier spell and required a crystal to cast, but the image stored was very blurry. He didn't expect the Tower Spirit to use it so well and so vividly. However, now that he knew the spell, he could slowly improve it in the future. If the improvement was successful, he planned to make a movie in the other world. There were elves, beastmen, centaurs, and winged people. With so many fantasy races, the movie would definitely be profitable. I'm talking about a proper movie. 36D, Pui, cross it out. It's a 3D surround image. Just thinking about it makes me excited. This way, the people of the other world would have a lot of mental food. There was simply too little entertainment in this world. The reason why bards were popular was because they could perform, sing, and tell stories. In this world, even a circus was enough to make people go crazy. If Sulan made a movie, people would be so shocked that their jaws would drop. When the time came, he might as well set up a film company and call it *******. However, these were all things for the future. Sulan didn't have the technology now. What he needed to do now was to rebuild the ecosystem of the secret plane according to the backup information of the ecological system of the Tower Spirit. In fact, it wasn't easy to build an independent ecosystem in a secret plane. This experiment was done by a country in his previous life. Back then, the United States spent a lot of money to build a laboratory called Biosphere 2. It was a closed space where various plants and animals were planted. At the same time, a few scientists were put in to form a simple ecosystem. In this experiment, some technology was used to help the ecosystem cycle. The whole plan was to live in the Biosphere 2 laboratory for 5 years. However, the experiment only lasted for a year before it had to be stopped. Because the ecosystem inside had collapsed, all the plants and animals could no longer survive. The technology in his previous life couldn't be completed even when he transmigrated to Sulan. However, in this fantasy world, the Arcanists had solved these problems thousands of years ago. Sulan looked at the biosphere modification technology that the Tower Spirit mentioned. Just looking at the technology made Sulan's scalp tingle. Terrain modification: use magic to modify the ground into the shape you want. The lowest level is 7, and the highest level is 10. Environment modification: permanently change the environment of a space or place. The more the environment is modified, the more difficult the spell is. The lowest level is 5, and the highest level is 10. Ecological recombination: permanently change the ecology of an area. The creatures in the area, the highest level is 15, will be changed according to the caster's wishes. The lowest level is 9, and the highest level is 10. Gene cultivation: a magical spell combined with cloning. Can use the genes of some creatures to directly create the original creatures. Note: this spell can only create normal creatures. It has no effect on magic creatures. Level 8 spell. Gene recombination: a powerful spell invented by the Arcanists. This spell can use existing genes to create new creatures. Note: this spell is very dangerous. Please use it with caution. Level 9 spell. Bloodline modification: a bloodline modification technique invented by the Arcanists. It can allow a normal creature to have the abilities of other creatures. Note: this spell is easy to cause bloodline diseases. Please use it with caution. Level 7 spell. When Sulan saw the last 2 spells, he was shocked. This kind of spell was strictly limited even during the Arcane Empire. When this kind of spell was first invented, it was all the rage. However, it soon led to serious consequences. The most typical examples of this kind of gene recombination and bloodline modification were the Beastmen and Bloodline Wizards. The Beastmen were first created by some Arcanists. Sulan didn't know the specific reason. Under normal circumstances, the bloodline of the Beastmen was very unstable, and there were often various problems. However, the Beastmen also had talents that ordinary people didn't have. For example, as long as the cat Beastmen reached adulthood, their agility would generally exceed 20. The bear Beastman's strength was also generally outstanding. Later, for some reason, this kind of gene recombination technology was banned by the Arcane Empire. As for the bloodline modification technique, this kind of technology was generally used on the Arcanists themselves. Many of the Arcanists' descendants didn't have the ability to cast spells, so they invented this kind of technology so that their descendants could have the bloodline ability and become warlocks. In addition to these technologies, there were various weather spells in the technical information, which could change the seasonal climate in the secret realm. These spells could almost be used to transform a half-bit wall into a large secret realm. Of course, the manpower and material resources needed were far from what 1 or 2 wizards could do. Even legendary wizards couldn't do it. Only a dozen legendary wizards working together could achieve that kind of world-like miracle. Sullen's current secret realm was, of course, not so exaggerated. Although his secret realm covered a large area, it was essentially different from the half-bit-wall secret realms. The half-bit-wall secret realms could exist independently and didn't need to be attached to the main plane. Sullen's secret realm of space folding was just using space spells to hide a piece of land in the material plane. Overall, it still belonged to the material plane. Although this kind of secret realm couldn't be compared to the half-bit-wall secret realm, one advantage was that there was no need to reconstruct the terrain, the air and gravity system of the secret realm didn't need to be reconstructed, and there was no need to open up space or half-bit wall. The difficulty of construction was sharply reduced. The energy barrier used to divide the area in the secret realm had been damaged. This kind of energy barrier could divide the secret realm according to one's ideas. The strength of the energy barrier could withstand a legendary spell attack. Many areas must be divided with this kind of spell, such as the planting area. There were all kinds of high-value magic plants planted there. Once they weren't taken care of and were destroyed by other animals, it would be a big loss. There was also the need to build an ecological park in the secret realm. Many magic creatures couldn't be bred like cattle and sheep. They must be given a wild environment. The ecological park was specially prepared for this kind of magic beast. Some magic plants also needed to be bred in the wild. According to the materials given by Tower Spirit No. 1, such an energy barrier to divide the secret realm would cost at least 5 million kinnar. Even if Sulan had obtained all of the Grey Dwarf's treasures, it would be painful to take out such a large sum of money. Half of the treasure he got from the Grey Dwarf would be used up in an instant. As for the space folding circle and the large protective force field that surrounded the secret realm, it would cost an astronomical amount of money to rebuild these two runic circles bit by bit. Sulan used to think that he was quite rich. If he released the money in his hands, he could destroy the economy of a country. Now, it seemed that he was thinking too much. With so little money, he couldn't even build a secret realm. 10 million kinnar wasn't too high a price to build a wizard tower for Hathaway. Chapter 249. Because the terrain of the secret realm hadn't changed much, Su Luan could repair it according to the information given by Tower Spirit 1. He didn't need to change the terrain or the environment. This greatly reduced the difficulty of repairing the secret realm. The biosphere in the secret mirror was a bit more difficult to build. Normal animals were fine, but he needed a lot of magical beasts. The Tower Spirit also stored a lot of genes. If Sulan could use gene cultivation or cloning spells, he could directly create them. However, these two spells were both Circle 8 and Circle 9 spells. Only legendary wizards could master them. Even Hathaway was still one level away. Sulan also found some dragon genes. Of course, they weren't real dragons. They were dinosaurs that had gone extinct in his previous world. There were some dinosaurs in the wild, such as velociraptors, Spinosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, and so on. However, most of them lived in the south. In some of the wilds in the south, these dinosaurs were considered tyrants. It was said that these dinosaurs first came out of the secret mirror. There were no dinosaurs in this realm, but the Arcanists captured a lot of dinosaurs from other realms for research. These dinosaurs were quite strong. For example, the velociraptors were level 10 and had a challenge rating of level 5. It would take a few nights to take care of them. However, the velociraptors lived in groups of 3 to 6. There were no grand nights to take care of them. As for the Tyrannosaurus, it was level 17. It was stronger than a lot of your own. Of course, there weren't many dinosaurs at this level. There were also some dinosaurs that could no longer be called dinosaurs. They had some dragon blood in them, and their bodies had mutated. Sulan didn't know if the ancient Arcanists had done some blood modification experiments on them, but he guessed it was very likely. Although the secret mirror was severely damaged, some parts of the equipment were still preserved. They could be used again after some repairs. In order to create a suitable environment in the ecological garden, all kinds of rune circles were needed. These rune circles were in a stagnant state because of the interruption of energy. Many runic matrices could no longer be used after a long time of aging. They needed to be remade. Su Len had mastered many runes during this period of time. He repaired many runic matrices according to the repair standards given by Tower Spirit No. 1 and reconnected them to the energy channel. After spending some time in the secret territory, Su Len returned to Northern Town City to rest. There was a lot of work to be done in the secret territory, so he could only do it bit by bit. Su Len did not want to be so busy that he did not even have time to rest. The land next to the Lord's castle had been cleared out after a period of work. The land was now very busy. The workers were digging the foundation. The foundation of the Wizard Tower was more than 100 meters tall. Naturally, it was very important. Hathaway's Wizard Tower was built with 3 floors. The bottom floor was the dungeon, used to lock up some prisoners or magical beasts. The second floor was the elemental pool, and the first floor was the utility room and ordinary warehouse. The Wizard Tower on the ground was divided into 7 floors. The first floor was the living room and the servants' living quarters. The second floor was the guest room and the wizard apprentices' room. The third floor was the battle training ground and the spell training ground. The fourth floor was where the apprentices were taught and where the magic statues were stored. The fifth floor was Hathaway's laboratory. The sixth floor was where Hathaway lived and where the treasury was located. The seventh floor was the observatory of the Wizard Tower. It was also the control center of the Wizard Tower. The weapon system of the Wizard Tower would also be installed there. The blueprint of the Wizard Tower had been determined long ago. It would take at least a few years to build such a huge Wizard Tower with the current power of Northern Town City. The construction of the Wizard Tower was not too difficult. The difficult part was the engraved runes and all kinds of energy channels. The workers and slaves of Northern Town City could not do this kind of work. Only the wizards could do it themselves. However, Su Len soon discovered that there were not only normal people building the Wizard Tower, but there were also half-elves and drows. Although they were not wizards, they also had some spellcasting ability. Now that these elves were also involved in the construction of the Wizard Tower, Su Len was a little surprised. However, he soon realized that both Karina and Grace were spellcasters. Although they were bloodline warlocks, they could also build a Wizard Tower after entering the 4th grade. However, because of the lack of strength and resources, they did not have a Wizard Tower at all. Even if they joined Northern Town City, it was impossible to get Su Len to support them in building a Wizard Tower. The construction of a Wizard Tower almost bankrupted Northern Town City, let alone building 3 Wizard Towers. Now that Hathaway was building a Wizard Tower, they naturally wanted a share of the profits. Although they could not become the owner of the Wizard Tower, they could still use some areas of the Wizard Tower. Hathaway naturally agreed to their request. The condition was that they needed to help build the Wizard Tower. The foundation of the 120-meter Wizard Tower was a full 30 meters. Thousands of construction teams worked under the supervision of the drows. The soil would be transported to other parts of the city. Under the foundation of the Wizard Tower, the original soil was turned into rock by using the mud to stone spell. Some places were even blessed with the hardening spell to increase the strength. The base of the Wizard Tower would be built here. The Wizard Tower and the base would be connected by a structure. These were reserved for the future upgrade of the Wizard Tower into a floating space tower. The upgraded form of the Wizard Tower was the Floating Space Tower. This was the original form of the Floating Space City. Since the destruction of the Arcane Kingdom, the construction technology of the Floating Space City had been incomplete, but the technology of the Floating Space Tower had been preserved. A huge amount of energy was needed to make the Wizard Tower fly. Although the elemental pool could not support the consumption of the Floating Space City, the consumption of the Floating Space Tower could still support it. The Wizard Tower of the legendary wizards in this world was basically a floating space tower. The construction of the Floating Space Tower required a lot of mithril, which was not difficult for Su Len who had the mithril mine associated with it. According to the calculation of Bach, the silver mine was a large and rich mine, and there was still a lot of mithril associated with it. Now, except for a part of the mithril used to repair the secret realm, the rest was stored in the treasure house of the Lord's castle. It would be used when the wizard tower was upgraded to a floating space tower. A large amount of steel was transported out of the blacksmith workshop. After being smelted by the blast furnace, the metal processed by the Grey Dwarfs was already steel. The construction of the wizard tower required a lot of steel. A steel skeleton was erected, and a large amount of obsidian was transported. If one had enough money, they could use obsidian to build the whole tower. Just like the Rollin Kingdom, if one had enough money, they could use obsidian to build the city wall. Although Su Len also wanted to use obsidian to build a wizard tower, considering that it also required a lot of money to repair the secret realm, he could only reduce the amount of obsidian used in the wizard tower. Obsidian was only used in some important areas of the wizard tower, and ordinary marble was used in other places. In fact, some wizards who were really poor would use ordinary stones to build the wizard tower. Of course, they could also use soil. First, they would use mud to rock to turn the soil into rocks, and then cast hardening on the rocks. Although it was more troublesome, the strength of the wizard tower was also very high. Of course, the workload of the wizard would increase by many times. The workload was enough to make a wizard chop off his hands. Generally, wizards with a little bit of money would not do this. Only the poor would use this method. The effect of hardening was permanent. Wizards at the level of a great wizard could cast it to make wood as strong as steel. If it was stone, the strength would be even higher. Wizard towers that could really travel to the astral world were built with a large amount of obsidian, and then cast hardening on the basis of the obsidian. The strength of the wizard tower built in this way would reach an extraordinary level. Su Len had sent 2,000 kobolds to the underground world to mine obsidian. However, obsidian was very hard to mine, so other than mining obsidian from the underground world, Northtown City had also bought a large amount of obsidian from the Rollin Kingdom. The craftsmen built according to the requirements of the blueprint. The half-elf spellcasters and drows began to cast mud to rock on the rocks and obsidian. Hathaway cast hardening on the rocks, Karina, and Grace did the same. In order to speed up the construction of the wizard tower, Hathaway pulled out the clay golems and rock golems she made. When these golems first appeared, the workers were scared out of their wits. The 3-meter-tall rock golems had arms thicker than their waists. When they walked, the ground trembled slightly. It was very oppressive. The workers were very worried that they might accidentally be trampled to death by these golem puppets. However, after a period of familiarity, these workers were no longer afraid of the golem puppets. Instead, they became very curious about these golem puppets. If it weren't for the reputation of the wizards and the power of these golems, these people would have already climbed up to take a look. One had to admit that the humans' ability to adapt was very strong. Since Northtown City had started to clear out the monsters in the wilderness, the number of slaves in the territory had skyrocketed again. In less than a month, the army of Northtown City had captured more than 10,000 kobolds, goblins, gnolls, and orcs as slaves. Therefore, although a lot of people were used to build the wizard tower, the construction of Northtown City did not slow down either. The various public facilities in Northtown City were not yet complete. According to Sullen's requirements, all the roads had to be paved with stone or gravel. Now, most of the main roads in the city had been completed, but some of the roads in the market had not yet been completed. Some places in the city had begun to build street gardens and green parks. In the past, to speed up the construction of other buildings, they had to prioritize the construction of other buildings. Now that they had enough manpower, they began to build these on a large scale. Chapter 250. In the northern wastelands, while the northern city was under construction, in the wastelands northwest of the Sierra de Lotus, a large number of orcs were moving southward. Summer was about to pass, and the sun in the sky was not as hot as before. Groups of green-skinned orcs were advancing southward on the barren wastelands. "Chieftain, we don't have much food left," an orc said to Rogessus. Rogessus was silent for a moment. "How much food do we have left?" "Including today's food, it's only enough for us to last a week. It's summer now, and we have to hunt and gather along the way. It'll take us a month at most, the green-skinned orc said. Rogessus's eyes suddenly lit up. A month. That's enough time. A month later, it'll be the harvest of the southern human kingdoms. As long as we break through the stronghold, the food outside the city will be ours. That's enough for our entire tribe to eat for a whole year. This time, we want to have a piece of warm and fertile land under the sun. At the same time, the Rarans kingdom, Florence kingdom, and Saren kingdom had received news of the orcs' invasion. These kingdoms had been paying attention to the orc tribes in the northern wastelands. When they saw the orc tribes moving southward, they immediately sent back the news. The invasion of the beast men at this time put a lot of pressure on the human kingdoms. There was still a month before the harvest, and the nobles were reluctant to burn their fields. Most of the farmlands outside the city belonged to the nobles, and they wanted them to burn their own fields. The stingy nobles wouldn't do that. As for the orc invasion, that was the army's problem. The orc invasion also made a few kingdoms nervous. The nobles near the northern border began to recruit soldiers. As for the refugees that had been promised to Sulan, they were forced to join the army. In a short period of time, the number of soldiers in the northern nobles' hands increased by 2 to 3 times. However, even though the number of soldiers increased by 2 to 3 times, the strength of the army didn't increase. Instead, it decreased. These soldiers were basically farmers who had just put down their hoes and picked up their weapons. They could defend the city, but they would probably mutiny and run away as soon as they entered the battlefield. The Florentine kingdom, the Rorans kingdom, and the Saren kingdom all began to increase the number of troops in their respective fortresses. The Florentine kingdom's Blackstone city used to only have 5,000 troops stationed there, but after receiving the orcs' invasion, the number of troops increased to 30,000 in less than a week. Roland's Beast Blood Fortress and the Saren Kingdom's Canyon Pass had also increased their troops. At the same time, the nobles of the northern lands had also issued a mobilization order. All sorts of military supplies were being collected. Many merchant convoys that were ready to depart were stopped. Then, some soldiers took the order and confiscated the goods of these merchants. These goods would be returned after the war ended. Of course, this was just an official statement. In fact, these goods would not be returned even after the war ended. In the end, they would only be compensated according to the lowest price of these goods. It wasn't that they wouldn't be compensated at all. In this era, those who could form merchant convoys had the backing of nobles. If there wasn't compensation, those nobles wouldn't give up. The human kingdoms in the north and the northern wastelands were separated by the Naffle mountain range. This Naffle mountain range stretched for thousands of miles. The main peak of the mountain range was covered in snow all year round. Many wild beasts and magical beasts lived there. Although this mountain range separated the humans from the northern wastelands, there were still many paths that could be passed through. The Blackstone Fortress, the Beast Blood Fortress, and the Canyon Pass were the 3 largest paths through this mountain range. These canyons were much easier to traverse than the other paths through the mountains. There was no problem for large carts to pass through. Apart from these 3 canyons, the other paths were rugged, steep, and difficult to pass through. There were many places where carriages couldn't pass through. Some of the most dangerous paths were steep cliffs on one side and bottomless abyss on the other. There was only a rugged path that was less than half a meter wide. Most of these paths were used by smugglers and merchants. Not only were these paths difficult to traverse, they were also life-threatening. If they accidentally bumped into the magical beasts that lived there, they would lose both their lives and their wealth. The Beast Blood Fortress was the gate to the north of the Rorans kingdom. Once this place was breached, the 3 northern provinces of the Rorans kingdom would have to face the assault of the orcs. Ever since Count Colin had received news that the orcs were heading south, he had immediately started preparing for battle. There were only 3,000 soldiers stationed in the Beast Blood Fortress. Among them, there was an army of 500 knights. These knights were the backbone of the Beast Blood Fortress. 500 heavily armored knights were mounted on warhorses that were similarly armored. They were the strongest soldiers in the human kingdoms of this world. A knight, man, horse, and armor weighed up to 500 kilograms. When they charged, there was no need to talk about weapon damage. Just the impact alone was enough to rupture the internal organs of an adult orc. The 30,000 reinforcements from the kingdom had also arrived. However, this did not make Count Colin relax. According to the information from the front lines, the orcs could be said to have turned out in full force this time. They were facing an orc army of at least 100,000 men. Outside the Beast Blood Fortress, the various antlers and barricades from before had been completely destroyed. The ground was a mess, with corpses and bloodstains everywhere. The air was filled with the nauseating smell of blood. In the battle that had just ended, the orcs had not gained the slightest advantage. However, they had also successfully accomplished their battle objective. All the defensive facilities outside the fortress had been destroyed. The human soldiers guarding the fortress were still rather excited. Although the orc army seemed to be large, the fortress had taken advantage of the natural terrain. The orcs could not make use of their advantage in numbers at all. The narrow terrain meant that they could only put in a small number of soldiers to attack. The steep mountain walls on both sides of the fortress provided them with a natural side protection. Below the walls, a large number of corpses were piled up. The nauseating smell attracted a large number of vultures. Some scavenger crows were also cawing in the sky. Normal beasts were afraid of an army, but these birds did not have many scruples. When night fell and the battle ended, it was time for them to have a full meal. The orc army camp was only 10 miles away from the fortress. At this time, a large number of orc supervisors were using leather whips to drive the kobolds, goblins, and other slaves to cut down trees. Then the orc craftsmen would make simple siege weapons. Although the orc civilization could not be compared to that of the humans, their social system was much stronger than that of the gnolls, kobolds, and goblins. Just 3 days after the battle between the humans and orcs at the Beast Blood Fortress, the Blackstone Fortress and the Canyon Pass also broke out in battles. After a short period of probing, the orcs began a powerful attack. Sulen knew that the orcs would invade later. After all, the northern citadel was not on the path of the orcs. The closest battlefield to the Blackstone Fortress was only 300 miles away. To the north of the northern citadel was the Sierra de Lotus. If the orcs wanted to attack the northern citadel, they would have to go around the Sierra de Lotus and attack from the northwest. After knowing that the orcs were attacking, Sulen immediately called back the army that was clearing out monsters and bandits in his territory. The northern citadel now had 7,000 soldiers. Most of them were spearmen. There were 4,000 of them, followed by 2,000 archers. Originally, Sulen wanted to form more archers. However, archers were not like spearmen. A wooden stick and a sharp spearhead were enough. The archers' bows needed good materials. Although the centaurs and gnolls had cultivated wood to make bows, the amount was limited. It was hard to form a 2,000 archers. Most of them were still using birch bows. The strongest among them were the gnolls. The strongest of them had already become a gnoll magic archer. They could add elemental effects to their arrows. Most of the gnolls were still at the gnoll archer level. As for the gnoll phantom archer, there was not a single gnoll archer. The main reason was that gnolls needed twice as much experience to level up as humans. But even so, the accuracy and range of the half-elf archers were much higher than that of human archers. Suluan sent out all the scouts to keep an eye on the movements of the Beastman army. At this time, the Beastman army shouldn't know about Suluan's city. Once they knew that there was a human city here, the Beastmen would definitely attack. At the same time, the construction of the wizard tower in the city did not stop. However, Sulen sent out a large number of people to start digging the moat. Before, only a small part of the moat was dug out. After the orcs were dealt with, there were no more enemies in the area. Therefore, the moat was stopped. Now, it was just a restart. Sullen's moat would directly lead the water from the Red Sand River. The moat was about 10 meters wide and 3 meters deep. The water in the moat was flowing. Sulen even had the underground spring ability to lead 2 springs from the ground, allowing the water to flow into the moat. Since the North City was located on higher ground, there was no need to worry about the water flowing into the city. The moat was not only for defense, but also for water transportation. Sulen planned to build a dock outside the city after the war. It would allow ships to transport goods from the Red Sand River to the city gate through the moat. The North City's moat was being built as fast as possible. The caravans in the city had also received news of the orcs' attack. These caravans could not return to the human kingdom before the war ended. They could only stay in the North City for the time being. The guards and mercenaries of these caravans were also called up. Sulen did not plan to send them to the battlefield. He wanted to prevent them from causing trouble. Chapter 251. Although these mercenaries and guards weren't as strong as the regular army, they were still much stronger than normal people. Sulen didn't want these mercenaries and guards to cause trouble in the city while he was fighting on the front lines. Sulen had never overestimated the moral integrity of mercenaries and caravan guards. In this era, it was very dangerous to do business in the wilderness, especially in the northern wasteland. It was fine when they were in the city or within the city limits, because these people were like normal merchants. But in the wilderness, the law of the jungle prevailed. It was common for the merchant guards and mercenaries to rob other merchant caravans. These people were merchants when they entered the city, and bandits when they left. Unless they were caught directly, it was impossible to tell them apart. Sulen also had a lot of crazy things in the city, such as the secret recipe of white sugar, the brewing process of rum, paper making, and so on. Any one of these skills was worth tens of thousands of gold. As long as you learned one of these skills, you wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of your life. It wasn't impossible for you to even get a noble title. These people wanted to steal these skills from the first day they came to the city. Last month, Chris caught more than a dozen people who wanted to steal these skills. On average, she caught one every 2 days. As for what happened to these people in the end, it wasn't bad. Alex told Sulen that the low-grade harpies wanted some materials. Sulen waved his hand and gave these people to Alex to live in the Eagle Stronghold. There were more than 3,000 harpies in the Eagle Stronghold. Apart from the harpies and their leader, the rest of the harpies couldn't break free from their instincts. Those who dared to steal skills in the northern wastelands were all strong. Many of them were knights. This was good news for the harpies. These people were fed by the harpies 24 hours a day. They didn't rest at all. They were working hard all the time. These people could be said to be enjoying the feeling of having 3,000 wives. Once the orcs attacked the northern wastelands, the Castellans' mansion would definitely withdraw their men. At that time, the defense would naturally be a bit lax. Sulen didn't think these merchants would let go of such a good opportunity to resist the orcs. They would definitely take advantage of it. Sulen never overestimated human nature. The cheapest and most precious thing in the world was human nature. It was also the most vulnerable thing in the world. Blackstone Stronghold. The battle had already been going on for 3 days. The orc army had sent out a large number of servants to fight. They used these servants to consume the rolling stones and arrows of the humans. The high-intensity battle had consumed a lot of the Blackstone Fort's resources. The Blackstone Fort was a military stronghold and its walls were repaired quite well. The orc army didn't have any advantage. On the 4th day of the war, the Blackstone Stronghold. The city walls. The siege tower was a simple building made of wood. The orc soldiers could enter from the bottom of the siege tower and climb up the stairs. Along the way, they were protected by wooden planks, so they wouldn't be attacked by the enemy. At the top of the stairs was the exit of the siege tower. This exit was at the same height as the city walls. After walking out, one could immediately step onto the city walls and engage in close combat with the enemy. The Blackstone Stronghold was crudely made, but its effect was not bad. The Blackstone Stronghold was built by the Blackstone Stronghold. Although the Blackstone Stronghold was a great tool, its weakness was also obvious. It was slow. The Blackstone stronghold was built by the Blackstone stronghold. It was rough and heavy. If it was a normal human, it would be difficult to push the Blackstone stronghold forward. However, it was just right for the Blackstone stronghold. Other than the Blackstone stronghold, the Blackstone stronghold had also prepared some ladders and battering rams. The Blackstone stronghold was pushed by the Blackstone stronghold. The soldiers and generals of the Blackstone stronghold looked serious. When they saw the Blackstone stronghold approaching, they ordered the Blackstone stronghold's archers to shoot fire arrows. The fire arrows were a threat to the Blackstone stronghold. After being smeared with kerosene, the Blackstone stronghold's fire arrows were quite good. The Blackstone stronghold didn't have many fire protection measures. After the arrows hit the Blackstone stronghold, the kerosene stuck to the wooden planks and ignited them. The Blackstone stronghold didn't give up and continued to push forward. At the same time, the Blackstone stronghold's archers on the Blackstone stronghold began to shoot. The archers on both sides began to fight, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. Under the cover of the archers, the Blackstone stronghold quickly approached the Blackstone stronghold. The fastest battering rams were about to reach the Blackstone stronghold. Suddenly, a fireball the size of a washbasin flew out from the Blackstone stronghold. The fireball dragged a long tail behind it as it flew towards the battering rams. Boom! An explosion sounded. The battering rams and the dozen or so Blackstone stronghold soldiers were instantly engulfed in flames. The wooden battering rams were blown to pieces under the force of the explosion. The dozen or so Blackstone stronghold soldiers were also set ablaze. Wizards! Wizards! We have wizards! The soldiers on the Blackstone stronghold cheered. The morale of the Blackstone stronghold skyrocketed. On the Blackstone stronghold wall, a middle-aged man in a red robe waved his magic staff. Soon, another fireball flew out. This time, the fireball flew directly towards a tall Blackstone stronghold. The 20-meter-tall Blackstone stronghold couldn't dodge at all. It was instantly hit by the fireball. This Blackstone stronghold that didn't burn down after taking so many arrows exploded. The Blackstone stronghold archers on the Blackstone stronghold were blown away. The tall Blackstone stronghold was split in half. Many Blackstone stronghold soldiers below were directly hit by the burning wood. The Blackstone stronghold was instantly engulfed in flames. The Blackstone stronghold soldiers that didn't make it out were burned alive. This wizard cast a few fireballs to destroy most of the Blackstone stronghold's siege weapons. He was only an intermediate wizard. There were only a few wizards in the Blackstone stronghold. The wizards wouldn't use up all their mana. What they did just now was to boost the morale of the Blackstone stronghold. Even though most of the siege towers had been destroyed, the orcs quickly pushed out new siege machines. This time, the adepts did not continue to attack. Instead, the ballistae on the walls were drawn, and the sound of bowstrings being drawn rang out. A soldier placed a long spear on one of the ballistae and ignited it with kerosene. Bang! With a buzzing sound, the 3-meter-long spear flew out and pierced through an orc. It then fiercely nailed itself onto the siege chariot. The heavy siege chariot shook back and forth a few times. The flames on the spear ignited the siege chariot. Bang! 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 The sound of bowstrings rang out on the Blackstone stronghold wall. Spears flew out one after another, leaving a trail of corpses in their wake. The Blackstone stronghold soldiers that were directly hit had a bowl-sized bloody hole in their bodies. Some of the Blackstone stronghold soldiers that were too close were directly pierced through. However, the accuracy of the ballistae was limited. Their firing speed was also slow. Many of the siege weapons still managed to get close to the Blackstone stronghold wall. Seeing this, the general of the Blackstone stronghold immediately gave the order to counterattack. 500 knights quietly lined up behind the Blackstone stronghold gate. These knights all wore metal armor and held sharp swords in their hands. The 500 knights quietly stood behind the gate, waiting for the gate to open. An impassioned horn sounded. The gate of the Blackstone stronghold slowly opened. The knights who were already prepared immediately charged. The 500 knights instantly moved. The sound of hooves thundered on the battlefield. The fully armored knights instantly rushed out of the Blackstone stronghold gate and directly charged towards the orc stronghold's siege weapons. The orcs never thought that the humans would actually open the gate and attack. The Blackstone stronghold was immediately scattered by the human knights. The infantry was completely massacred by the charging heavy cavalry. Even the orcs were the same. Wherever the knights went, the orcs were cut down like grass. In just 2 charges, the orc stronghold's vanguard was scattered. Seeing the orc stronghold's soldiers fleeing in panic, the knights did not continue to pursue. Instead, they ignited the kerosene that they carried with them and threw it on the siege weapons. Dozens of siege weapons were quickly ignited. After these siege weapons were ignited, a deep horn sounded. All the knights turned their horses around and returned to the Blackstone stronghold. After the last knight entered, the gate closed again. The battle was still not over. The orcs did not choose to retreat after losing a large number of siege weapons. Instead, they sent another 2,000 to 3,000 soldiers to attack the Blackstone stronghold with ladders. The general of the Blackstone stronghold, Count Louis, had a heavy expression on his face. These damned orcs want to take us down in one go? Aren't they afraid of breaking their teeth? The archers madly pulled their bowstrings. Many of their arms were sore from pulling the bowstrings for so long. Many archers even had their fingers cut by the bowstrings. A rain of arrows fell from the sky, but the orcs were not afraid at all. The orc stronghold soldiers raised crude wooden shields. Many of the wooden shields were not even stripped of their bark. They forcefully endured the rain of arrows and continued to attack the Blackstone stronghold. A large number of orcs charged without caring about casualties. Soon, a ladder was placed on the Blackstone stronghold's wall. The orc stronghold at the back sped up and quickly climbed up the wall. They then stabbed down with their spears. A few orc stronghold soldiers cut off the hooks of the ladder and pushed it down. 2 orc stronghold soldiers who were halfway up the ladder fell from the sky. A tall orc stronghold jumped up the Blackstone stronghold's wall after a few jumps. He swung his giant axe and chopped the orc stronghold soldiers in half along with their weapons. He then defended the Blackstone stronghold's wall and allowed more orcs to climb up. Soon, 5 orcs came up. These orcs were under the lead of the orc stronghold's leader. The human soldiers around them were forced to retreat. Seeing this situation, a few knights immediately rushed up with their men. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.